just expressing general thoughts, and I felt that it was a task that was beyond me to determine what the Nevis Reformation Party wanted to present in Parliament and wanted to do for the country. Since then, sir, I did and I have done several budgets up until 2006 when I felt that it was time, not budgets, but manifestos.
Manifesto.
When I felt it was time for other persons with fresher minds and closer contacts with the young people of this country to come forward with their views. So I'm saying all that, Mr. President, to say this, that when I see a manifesto, or when I hear a manifesto, I know it's a manifesto. That is the point I want to make, sir. In other words, the presentation yesterday was basically in the guise of a budget, but it was a political manifesto for the upcoming election early in the new year. And the way it was presented, Mr. President, the argument is self-evident what the approach will be. I don't know how many people followed, listened, and understood. But as the speaker hurried through, because he did hurry through the budget, I sense a wish list. A wish list. And this wish list was massive. Really couldn't be done in 12 months. And certainly could not be done in 3 months. And those of us who are pragmatic understand this. You promise an elephant, but you really deliver a sheep. Or maybe even a mouse, depending on the circumstances. But here's the argument. People of Nevis, give me 3 seats, because I have these projects and I need to go to St. Kitts to negotiate for you with these 3 projects. Mr. President, I know that we are in a transactional age, the age of Trump and Trumpism. We are aware of that. No longer are there lofty ideals, visionary leadership, taking the vanguard, but it is you give me something and I give you something. And you ask yourself the question, does it work? Sometimes it works for a time. But the transactional approach, matters of a transactional nature, when the negotiation break down, the whole transaction falls into a bottomless pit. And there lies the danger. Put another way. It seems to me what I was being told yesterday. I will place my mask. I will fasten my mask. I will nail my mask to the ship of unity. But when I bargain and negotiate with them, I will have the trump card. There are several things wrong with that, Mr. President. You cannot and you must not depend on a transactional arrangement for your livelihood or for longevity. It is dangerous because in politics, there are no friends, only opportunities. In politics, there are no friends, only opportunities. It is a statement that has been made over and over, but it is self-evident. And today, a man or a woman may stand seemingly for something, and tomorrow they can be violently against it. So we need, as Nevisians, and I'm speaking to the people of Nevis, to fasten that deep into the recesses of our minds. Deep into the recesses of our mind. There is no friendship in politics, only opportunities. And so, Mr. President, if after the next federal election, a situation arises and several scenarios are available, and I'm not going to go too deeply into them because it is not my business to educate the other side. They must know their business, and I'm sure they do. If a scenario arises where even one party inside the coalition becomes strong enough to form the government by itself, where is your bargaining power? Where is your bargaining power? You have none. You have absolutely none. So you would have misled the people of Nevis down a cul-de-sac, down a road where there's no way out, and all you can do is to try to turn around and head back up the road. That is one scenario. The second scenario, Mr. President, is straightforward enough. Suppose the opposition wins enough seats to form the government. You have already fastened your mast to the ship of unity. How do you unfasten that mast? Who will need you? Absolutely nobody will need you. And so, again, you're down the cul-de-sac, and you'll have to fight your way out. Mr. President, in days of old, there were politicians who tried it, and they ended up on the dung heap of history on the island of Nevis. They ended up on the dung heap of history. To the point, and here's what I mean, they could not walk the streets of Nevis in their retirement days. They were reviled, ostracized, and totally rejected as human beings. That's a serious problem and a serious indictment of politicians, Nevisian politicians. Mr. President, politicians of old, and there has been an example of the Nevis Reformation Party forming alliances, but ensuring that their roots are deeply rooted, ensure that their roots are deeply fastened on the island of Nevis and with the people of Nevis. And to do this, you have to understand now that the people of Nevis must feel that they are not held on a pendulum, that they are not mendicants, they are not beggars, they are not on their knees, they are not dependent on anyone, but that they can support and be willing to support themselves at all times, even if they have to suck salt. We may not be in a suck salting era, because perhaps people have become comfortable, or maybe they have even become too soft, and people do not want to suffer anymore. Hardships are to be avoided. Perhaps that is the case. I don't know if hardships are forced upon you, you survive however you can. And that can be a situation that we will face down the road. But to follow the thrust of my argument, Mr. President, I'm saying this. Is it not better? Is it not better to carry out the will of the people demonstrated over a decade, over 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, Mr. President, where the people of Nevis have insisted and asserted that they want to run their own government and they want to make their own decisions on the island of Nevis. When you look at the manifesto, does it tell you that? Does it tell you that in taking a particular line or a particular direction, that you're providing on a long-term basis for the people of Nevis to continue to be in charge of themselves? Because I seem to remember, that's a Victor Martin phrase, I seem to remember that the presenter spoke about negotiations that were incomplete. After 5 years of being a minister in the Nevis Island government, after 4 years, or nearly 4 years, of being a federal minister, after, Mr. President, being present when the fund in St. Kitts was changed from the sugar fund to the hurricane relief fund, when you were there at the inception, Mr. President, the inception, the beginning, the foundation, the genesis, when you were there, did you not think that at that time you should have negotiated Nevis's position in terms of the percentage from the fund? You had the example of the VAT. You had the example of the sharing back in 1983. You heard that we were discussing geothermal. There have been other discussions and arguments about money. And do you think that I can accept this morning that the minister can come and tell me and tell the nation that they have nearly completed the negotiation? A negotiation of a matter that started under him, that originated with him, that was developed with him, Mr. President. Are we being told, therefore, that you have to vote the 3 seats, because if you don't, we won't complete the negotiation and we won't get any funds from the hurricane fund? That is deception. That is an insult to the people of Nevis, that argument, and it must not stand. It must not stand. Political games are political games. But I must make the point, Mr. President, the politics of small countries must be different to the politics of large countries. Otherwise, they will survive and will be destroyed. Because just like we are vulnerable to hurricanes and earthquakes and natural disasters, we are more vulnerable to political mistakes. And it is better to follow the trodden path than to try to be like the Americans in America. Because believe me, 10 years from now, we will realize the disaster that America has created for itself with that type of behavior. It's going to take a long time. Just like it takes a ship a long time to turn around, when a little boat can spin around in seconds, it's just so. It's just so. I do not advise that we practice the politics of transaction and politics of a transactional nature, because there is a huge abyss, a huge precipice down the road that you must meet and you must fall into because of the nature of politics in every country. Even the great Stalin who killed millions, he suffered an ignominious end. Even the great Soviet Empire fell apart, no matter how long. You look through history, and that is the situation. Let's not fool ourselves. Napoleon Bonaparte was so smart, so intelligent, such the genius of a strategist. And Wellington fooled him. You know how? Wellington looked at an area that was deceptively not level, marked it out, set his troops, and retreated to the point where he wanted to be. And that is how the genius was defeated at the Battle of Waterloo. There's always an answer. There's always an answer, Mr. President. Always an answer waiting for you. And the answer is not for CCM. It is for the whole of Nevis. Mr. President, to continue my line of argument, it doesn't matter. It should not matter. Let me not say it doesn't matter. It should not matter whether there are 3 seats, 2 seats, or 1 seat. You have a government to run it. You have policies to develop them. You have directions to take them. Take them with the assurance that the people who vote for you will vote for you again because you're making the right decisions. But when you have to depend on an uncertain alliance, it is dangerous, and it is a path that can only lead to destruction. Mr. President, politics is about people. Politics is about winning. Politics is about making right decisions. If winning is the only purpose and the only objective, then you shouldn't be in politics. You should not be. I watched the funeral of George Bush yesterday, George Herbert Walker Bush, and I was impressed. I was impressed, and I'll tell you why. He made decisions for the long-term good of the people of the United States of America. He lost the election, one-term president, but he made decisions for the long-term good. Everybody said, Clinton saved the country. George Bush said, watch my lips, there will be no taxes. And then he realized that he had to introduce taxes to make sure that the economy remained strong, and he did it, and he lost. There's a gentleman by the name of Erskine Sandiford from Barbados. He was Prime Minister of Barbados, and he made some bad decisions, and he lost the election. But before he did, he rectified the economy. And admire him as a great leader. As a great leader, because he put country above self, above winning, above personality, And that is something that we need to get back in our politics. You see, Mr. President, you can blame. You can play games. And I note 3 times the presenter said yesterday, 3 times, NRP caused something between 2006 and 2013. And I'm going to use figures, just pure figures inside his own budget to show that it is nonsense. Whether he wrote it, or whoever wrote it, or whoever put it in there. Just a sham, just a game, just a position to impress people. It makes no sense because the truth is known and the truth will always be out. You can commit murder midnight. Sometime down the road, the truth will be out. And people will suffer. And we don't need that, Mr. President. We don't need those times of shenanigans. They don't help anybody, except maybe short term. And you can't be short term in a country like this. You have to be long term. You have to be long term. So I am warning the people of Nevis that don't swallow that bitter pill. Do not swallow that bitter pill of 3 seats. Do not swallow that bitter pill of that we're going to get this road in Craddock Road and in Cotton Ground and in Browner Hill and Brick Hill if we do this and we do that and the other. Because it is not necessarily true. It is not necessarily true. In fact, it is not true. It is not true. And that type of politics does not serve the long-term interest of the country. And I must make the point. And I know people have accused us of all kinds of things. But whether it's the present government, whether it's the Concerned Citizens Party or the Nevis Reformation Party, if you go to think it, are you going to go against the interests of the people of Nevis? And isn't there an argument for checks and balances that in order to avoid corruption, in order to avoid all kinds of cronyism and so on, it's better to have a democratic system than a one-party system? Isn't that part of our argument why we support democracy? And if you're going to try to subvert democracy by going to the people and telling the people of this country that if you don't do this, this is what is going to happen. No. Let the people decide what they want. Let the people decide who is the better team to run the country. Present your case not on blackmail, not on bribery, but on facts. Facts. And facts. On the basis of what our Constitution states and what we say in our country as a democracy. Wanted to make that point, Mr. President. If it took me a long time, it was necessary for it to take me a long time because it's a fundamental point to the survival of this country and this island. Mr. President, another point occurred to me. I keep on hearing about the IMF report. And as I read and as I listened the budget address, I noticed references were made to IMF and the World Bank, the Caribbean Bank, and the Central Bank. But I am yet to see the publishing of the IMF report 2 times a year it is done. So, Mr. President, the question comes to my mind and has been coming to my mind regularly. Why is the report not published? The last one that I read stated that Nevis needs to begin to promote itself, needs to have investment of an income-earning nature so that Nevis does not continue to depend on transfers, grants from St. Kitts. The situation that required grants and transfers from St. Kitts has not changed. Has not changed. Although I see very subtly introduced into the budget is the thought that getting our fair share of the hurricane fund, and maybe that will replace the grants. Or maybe the argument can be made that we are not really getting grants, but we are getting funds from the hurricane fund that people are calling grants. That is not for me to prove or to disprove. All I'm saying that you have to be in a position to have the kind of investment that will take you away from dependence to independence. Several questions come to mind. If we are to continue in this mode, why bother have a Nevis Island administration? Why? Why bother have a Nevis Island administration? Then the argument can easily be presented that a Nevis Island administration is a burden to the Federation and should become defunct, and all powers should be sent back to Bastia. That can be an argument if the Nevis Island government is not able to support itself, or if people are not willing to use it to make Nevis economically independent, Mr. President. And sometimes I wonder if we are not headed there. And I have to wonder. It seems to me now that everybody who goes into politics in Nevis wants to end up in the federal government or the Federal Assembly. Why? Why? What is so big about the Federal House of Assembly? I remember I left it in 2000 voluntarily because I felt I could not serve my country well enough by being down there. I remember Mr. Daniel argued in 1989 he did not want to take part in the federal election. In fact, it was the night when the candidates were to be announced that he had to run because another potential cabinet ducked out. Ducked out in 1989. That is why he ran in the 1989 federal election. In fact, I was forced to go to St. Kitts to represent the Nevis Island administration when Mr. Swanson lost in the same 1989. I didn't want to go. I wasn't interested in going because my commitment has always been to the island of Nevis. So I wonder, where is this desperate haste for everybody? I'm not saying that nobody should go. I'm not saying that we mustn't have representation down there, because we must. Because there are certain issues that concern us that have to be debated and have to be examined and have to be articulated. But it's very difficult for you to have one foot in St. Kitts and another one in Nevis and be effective. I am not proposing that the present government follows what I'm saying. I'm simply saying to the people of Nevis that you must ask yourself a question. Are you being well served? If a man goes to the federal parliament, is a minister in the federal parliament, and is also fully employed on the island of Nevis? It's a question you have to ask yourself. And if you say no, then it's your business. You have said no, and it is all right. I am only here, Mr. President, to bring it to their attention and to tell them it does not work towards good management and good governance. That is what I am saying. And so, Mr. President, I would like to know about the IMF report. I would. And I would like to know what the IMF report says about Nevis. And I would like to know how that matter is being addressed. And I, this morning, will touch on how I see that an attempt is being made to address that matter. Mr. President, the state of the economies of the Eastern Caribbean. It seems to me sometimes we're up, and when we're up, and sometimes we're down. And when we're down, we're well down. The economies of the Eastern Caribbean. I'm not laying that at the feet of anyone inside here, or any division or any petition in particular at this time. I'm just saying that it's like we're on a merry-go-round. I had a friend who used to talk about the children of Sisyphus. I never read the story of Sisyphus, so I can't relate this story of Sisyphus. And I said to him once, I said, what is this thing about Sisyphus that you're always talking about? Well, he said, it is basically this. Every step they make forward, they make two backward. So the next position is that they're always going backward. Always going backward. I have seen on pages 6 and 7 of the budget address, international and regional economic developments, section 20, the last sentence, the World Bank's Global Economic Prospects June 2018 report, termed the turning of the tide, concurs with the findings of the World Economic Outlook. The report projects positive global growth for the years 2018 through to 2020, but with a slightly more conservative projection of 3% in 2018, 3.1% in 2019, and falling off to 2.9% in 2020. That is here in the budget, where it addresses or seeks to address the findings of the IMF and the World Bank, etc. And then on section 22, on page 7, reading from the top, the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank predicts that the growth for the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union will be 2.9 in 2018. It estimates that growth will remain positive and steady, but there also exists imbalances within the region. The ECCB predicts that only 6 of its 8 members will experience an expansion in economic activity in 2018. That's interesting. It predicts a growth of 2.9, but it also predicts only 6 of the 8 countries will experience economic expansion. Very interesting. I wonder who are the 2. The ECB forecasts that St. Kitts and Nevis will see further expansion in the economy in 2018, as the growth is predicted to be 2.07%. Okay, fine. So Haiti, St. Kitts and Nevis, not one of them. Mr. President, this is the presentation of the Minister of Finance based on statements made by regional and international institutions, economic institutions that have proven themselves in the past. But there are times they have been proven to be wrong too. Did they predict the recession of 2008? Did they predict it? I have noticed several things, Mr. President. I have noticed that in the United States of America, and in that presentation it says they are depending on America to take the world forward. I don't know why, but that's what they're saying. That's what they're saying. They're expecting America to take the world forward, not China, not India, America, not Europe. Interestingly enough, America has a crisis of leadership, a serious crisis of leadership. A man who deals in matters of transaction rather than policy. You see that trade war with China? You see what happened to the Dow when he had a meeting with the president of China and came back and told the people of the United States of America that they had things worked out, and then the Dow fell 799 points in one day. One day. You understand how much money was lost? Billions of dollars. And most likely, when they lose, you know who loses? The small man loses. Because the big man can survive, hold on long enough for it to come back. The big man gets washed out. The small man gets washed out. And he's gone. He's gone. All his savings gone. Poverty faces him. That's what happens. And if the small man is washed out, if the middle class is destroyed, the United States is in trouble. The United States is in trouble because the demand for goods and services depends on the middle class. If the middle class don't eat, there is no economy in the United States of America. The point that I'm making is, in spite of these predictions, with the man at the helm, who they have at the helm, he's causing the farmers in the Midwest to suffer. Billions of dollars of losses. He's talking about fighting down GM. He's talking about trade with Saudi Arabia. I wouldn't go into the details of that. He is closing his eyes to a number of things happening in the world. And you want America to lead? And you think America would lead? You really think that, Mr. President? You think China is going to sit back in a rocking chair and allow America to lead? Every mistake that America has been making, China has been benefiting from it and continues to benefit. And every month, mistakes are being made in the United States of America. You have Pompeo and you have Mattis trying to prop up the president. He's an oligarchic president. He's an oligarchic president. One day the president makes a statement, the next day a few fellows come out and say, no, he's wrong, he's wrong. This is the case, the president is wrong, and they're right. Nobody voted for them. They're like a ship without a rudder. And when the wind blows in one direction, they're down there full speed. And when the wind blows in another direction, they head in full speed. And that is the United States of America. That is going to lead us into prosperity. That's the United States of America. That is the United States of America that passed a tax break. The tax break, based on trickle-down economics, was supposed to put money in the hands of the rich so that the poor could benefit because they were going to invest in the United States of America. Why you think the votes went the way they went? Because it didn't happen. It doesn't happen. All that happens to the money was used for luxury, the money was used to buy back shares from the stock exchange, the money was used to invest in cheaper places. And that is the United States of America that is going to lead us out of a recession and lead us. My president, take the matter of housing. The United States of America and the great economists of America, they argue that the direction of housing is in the direction of the economy. Housing is down. The cost of housing is climbing. There's a recession coming in the United States of America. There is a recession coming in the United States of America. And with the kind of leadership they have and the confusion that they have, it can be very severe. I think it's Minnesota. You heard what happened in Minnesota? I think it was Minnesota. A Democratic governor was elected. You know what the Senate did? They jumped in last night and passed laws to bind, to tie up the governor. And you're talking about leading the world? You saw the funeral? Where Clintons had their head straight. The Bush gave a little shake and disappeared. And Barack Obama was left with a smile on his face. Poor black man got to be the buffer. You see big men, presidents and former presidents, you see what's going on? We better understand. We better understand. So that is the international situation. Factually presented by me this morning. Factually presented by me. And nobody can challenge anything that I've said because it is true for all of us to follow. That is what is there before us. That is what is there before us. Now, talk about the regional situation. Talk about the regional situation. The bastion of Eastern Caribbean economies, Barbados, blown to smithereens. Blown to smithereens. And people are being sent home in droves by the new government. People are being sent home in droves. Add that to all those who have been sent home before. So you're going to use a policy of slash and burn. I'm sure we are familiar with the statement slash and burn. Destroy. Like how they used to plant sugar cane with the slaves back in the early days. Slash, burn, destroy. So what will happen to all those persons who are out of work? What will happen to the economy? Will the economy ever recover? Because it happened in Jamaica about 30 years ago. Will the economy ever recover? They have VAT. They have personal income tax. They have corporate income tax. They have all kinds of taxes. And people are being sent home. In other words, Mayor might have had the solution when she was in the opposition. But now in government, what is the solution? What is the solution? A matter and a period of austerity. That is the solution. Trinidad and Tobago, oil-rich country, and I understand that just now they are refining oil from outside rather than their own oil. Trinidad and Tobago having a currency problem. A currency problem. In other words, if you are a businessman, Mr. President, and you're a big businessman, and you want to import stuff, you have to get permission from the central bank. Because they have currency restriction again, like they had in the 1970s. Trinidad and Tobago, with the most potential in the Eastern Caribbean. Mr. President, it is interesting that I'm saying that because all the Canadian banks are disappearing from the Caribbean. All of them. We must ask ourselves, the ECCB is so positive and everybody is so hopeful and the Canadian banks are on the run. Why are they on the run? Why are they on the run? There's a historical, there's a history of the Canadian banks. If you look at their data, when things are bad, they run. When things are good, they come back. They are in the business of trade. That is their business, trade. I am told, Mr. President, that the bank there is it RBTT? No, Scotia. Scotia. All of them anyway. Every one of them. CIBC, RBTT, all of them owned by Canada, and they all are on the run. But I want to talk particularly about Scotia. Because I never for the life of me anticipated that Scotia will disappear. I thought they were doing pretty well, that they had a very good niche. That's what I thought. With the consumption business of cars and refrigerators and so on, and not heavy home loans, I thought that made a lot of sense for a bank. Maybe not for us, but for a bank. And then I was told the day before it was announced that Scotia was selling out in the Eastern Caribbean. And I learned later that Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago, and Jamaica were not being sold out by the rest of us. And I learned, Mr. President, that it was to a Trinidad bank by the name of Republic. Well, to tell you the truth, Mr. President, I'm a Caribbean man. I was educated at the University of the West Indies. So days where I was acculturated, so think Caribbean, think oneness and so on and so forth. And I love the idea. And I wish I could support it. I wish I could support the court, the Caribbean Court of Justice. I wish I could support it. I wish I could. I wish I could. Because from a principal point of view, from an intellectual point of view, I love the idea. I'm a Caribbean man. But Trinidad and Tobago has a shortage of currency. And the Trinidad Bank Republic is buying out one of the largest banks in the Eastern Caribbean. What are the implications? I'm not going to go into any great analysis, but I raised the issue. I raised the issue this morning, Mr. President. I raised the issue. I raised the issue because we in the Caribbean always allow things to happen to us. We never take the lead. We never take the leadership. We always sit on our behinds. And I'm sure that is available in Parliament. Right? Available in Parliament. We sit on our behinds and wait until the wrath falls upon us, and then we run around like turkeys with our heads cut off and hope that somebody will save us. Mr. President, many years ago when I was a minister, federal minister that is, I had to go to Jamaica to a conference. Traveled first class, booked my ticket early, had my secretary book my ticket early, confirm, traveled to Jamaica, went to the conference. I never like to stay out of Nevis for too long. All kind of reasons make me want to come home. And when I called to confirm, because in those days you had to, they said they can't find my name. They don't see my name anyway. I traveled first class to Jamaica from St. Kitts. Nobody is going to book me one way because I don't intend to live in Jamaica. They can't find my name. When I checked further, somebody said, didn't you see the number of Trinidad ministers at the conference? You know what they did with me? Whoops. Because BB was owned by Trinidad and Tobago. BB was owned by Trinidad and Tobago. Therefore, they were more equal than the rest of us. They were more equal than the rest of us. It's like the Orwellian book there, The Animal Farm. They were more equal than the rest of us. You think that mentality has changed? You think so? Well, if you want to think so, think so. And if you want to sit on your behinds and do nothing about it, think so. Think so. Think so. It is in the interest of Nova Scotia to make an arrangement in the interest of Nova Scotia. Good Lord. Which international organization don't seek to maximize its position or minimize its losses? There's none. They all do the same thing. They do it to America, they do it to England, they do it to everybody. Apple, every one of them, they do it. But you must have the alertness and the understanding of what is happening, and you must know what your own interest is, and your own interest must come first. And you must not, Mr. President, be divided. You must not let them pull you aside and offer you a little pittance to sell out your country and sell out your people. I don't know Mr. Gaston Brown very well. In fact, let me say I don't know him at all. I just know him on the television. But he had the courage to speak up. And it's not the first time the Antiguans did. I remember in the early days of the gambling thing, when Antigua took the years to court and won, although they won, but nothing has ever been done. I remember that very well. And he has taken the leadership in speaking out. We have the foreign minister of the Federation sitting here this morning, and the Minister of Finance of Nevis. The question is, where is your voice? What is your position? What is the position of our government in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis? Is it sitting as behind? Waiting for leadership from somebody else? Is it calling a meeting? Isn't the ECCTV in St. Kitts? Isn't the headquarters on the island of St. Kitts? Should not St. Kitts be taking the leadership in this matter? Shouldn't the people of the OECS be having a discussion at least to understand the implications? Are we dead? Are we dead? Are we brain dead, Mr. President? Can we only kill each other? Can we only cut each other's throat and practice cannibalism? That's all we're good for as black people? That's the only thing we're good for? Has the metropole set us on each other, given us politics to kill each other while they continue to do as they like in our country and everywhere, economically? Is that what it is all about? Is that what it's all about? In 2018, we have not learned the death of sugar, the death of bananas, we have not learned. And financial services and life water, and we have not learned. So, if I may conclude on that matter, the ECC dollar is strong. It is supported by the US dollar, I think some 97% or somewhere there. So if the banks in Trinidad control the economies and the money economy of the ECC or ECS, what happens? Like my example of being on an aircraft and being bounced off. What happens when Mr. Smithen, big Trinidadian businessman, wants $100 million and Mr. Brand, the little Nevis man, wants some money? Mr. Brand, they would not even remember you. They would not even remember you. And what does that mean for the OECS? Recession upon recession. Lack of investment, unavailability of money, businesses having problems in buying goods and services from abroad, inflation. Inflation. Now, I don't mind if we have a discussion, an open public discussion, and we are told it is not so. Because you cannot always be right, and sometimes it's nice to be wrong. And this time I'll be happy to be wrong. I do not mind if we have a public discussion, and I'm told that the central bank has the power to control and will control, because having power and not using it are two different things. I do not mind that. I do not mind if we are told that banks like National Bank and the Bank of Nevis and these banks in the Eastern Caribbean can absorb those accounts and those activities. After all, it's only 123 million EC dollars, I think, is EC dollars, 123 million. And if it's US, then it's still small. All that we have to do is to stop the nonsense of putting people on board who can't even read. Who can't even read. who don't know their names, who have no understanding of economics and business especially. You don't have to know banking, but you have to know business. Just to get a salary, to get a stipend, we have to stop this nonsense. Political incest. We need to stop it and think in terms of the depositors and the availability of money for people to borrow to develop the country. That's all we need to do. That's all we need to do. But it's not happening. And maybe that is why it is useful for us to be quiet and say nothing and seek to put nothing in place, because the requirements of the law that covers a banking demands that people must be of a certain caliber and a certain capability and a certain standing to be on boards. And that these boards should not be sinecures. Mr. President, you can't run country so. You can't run country so. You must not want to be in power just to be in power. There are serious consequences if you want to be in power, and there are serious decisions that have to be made. You don't have to be a Mr. Knows-all, but you need to have people to advise you. You need to have good people around you to advise you. You need to have good people around you to advise you. And it's no sense have people sitting down on a board and can't even read the documents. It's no sense have people sitting down on a board and don't understand what decisions are being made. It's no sense for 2 people or 3 people to be making decisions. Don't make no sense. Don't make no sense. One of the things that worry me about National Bank and continues to worry me is that it's too political. When Denzel was in there, I told him so. I said, you all need to sell the shares, the majority of shares, to the public. Let the bank go. Let the bank float upwards. Let the bank thrive. Let the bank thrive. When you put your political cronies on there, they don't bring much. I remember Mr. Daniel, and Mr. Daniel consulted me a lot with the formation of the bank at Nevis. And you know what Mr. Daniel wanted the bank for? Mr. Daniel was trying to follow in the footsteps of National Bank. That is, the government had a bank. So when the government had a problem with money, the government had a bank. I said, Mr. Daniel, you know whose money it is? It's not the government's money. It's the people's money. And you should not be playing the fool with the people's money. Let the bank thrive, but let it be a private sector bank. And I convinced him, and it has worked. And I hope we don't make the mistake that Sinkits has made. Because for some reason, whether it's Labour or Unity or PAM, they seem unable to let go. And so that is why people put their money in these foreign banks, and now the foreign banks are going, we have a problem. I hope I'm clear. I hope I'm clear. Because I'm not trying to be political. I'm trying to show how we can ruin our economy or how we can take our economy forward. That's all I'm trying to do. That's all I'm trying to do. And we better wise up already. Don't follow in the footsteps of fools. Do not follow in the footsteps of fools. But show leadership and show common sense. Show leadership and show common sense. A lot of people like to pretend they know when they don't know. A lot of people like to use words, and the words have no meanings. No meanings. Mr. President, the economy in Nevis. Nice words were passed yesterday. Mention was made of the trucks, and mention was made of the boats, and mention was made of other things which I'll touch later. But I just want to address the trucks and the boats. Once you have a slowdown, the trucks will not move. And some people will sell their trucks. The danger lies in the jealousy. Because if you have 3 trucks, and I have 1, and your 3 trucks are working, and mine is not, you may not have any truck at all. You may not have any truck at all. And if I have to sell my truck, and your truck's doing business, you may not have any truck at all. And who don't like it is their business. I'm stating the fact. I'm stating the fact. It is not a sector of the economy in itself. It is not. I don't really want to argue that point because my friend there, Jeffers, seemed to get upset when I say it. But I would suggest that you read and you will find that I'm not wrong. It is not a sector in itself. It services a sector. It services. I'm not here to embarrass you, you know. I know you well. I remember when I used to run Paris Car Rent, I used to run TDC cars. I'm just telling you because every time I speak about it, you jump up and say all kind of things. well, Mr. President, we now hear about the boating sector. You know, hear about the boating sector. And I just smiled to myself. Maybe it's a good thing I'm on my way out. I could smile and don't get upset and don't allow myself to be stressed. This brain is damn good, though, you know. Sharp. Sharp. As sharp as ever. Not because I'm leaving. I'm not leaving because I'm slow. Mr. President, I apologize, sir. But sometimes for effect. If you're going to schools, you'll hear far more words than that, my brother. My head rise. The boats. I remember when I was in the opposition, I was a member of the Bank of Nevis board. I think I was chairman of one of the banks, the International Bank, and chairperson of a number of bodies there. That Mr. Isaac, and I will call his name, came up with the idea, or whoever came up with the idea, but he was in the forefront of a ferry. Now, I was quite aware of the advantages of a ferry. But let me tell you a little story. When the invasion of Grenada took place, I know we're gone already? Oh, anyway. When the invasion of Grenada, people need to know. I hope that Mr. Brandt will give me an extra half an hour if I need it. People need to know. When the invasion of Grenada took place, Mr. Reagan, in order to get the support of the OECS, granted certain things to Dominica, St. Kitts and Nevis, etc. And he granted the Peninsula Road. Peninsula Road. Several $1 million, I can't remember the figure. But Mr. Daniel, as the Minister of Finance, he was supposed to support it. And you know, Mr. Daniel and I were very, very close. You know, he discussed most of those things with me. He got vexed with me because I wouldn't support secession. But I wasn't going to do it. And Mr. Daniel spoke to me and said, boy, they want me to support this thing. But you know, all Nevis is getting is a little peer. All Nevis is going to get is a little peer. So the ferry, the rural ferry is going to leave St. Kitts millions of dollars and a little peer. I said, Mr. Daniel, you know what? The idea is not a bad one, you know, because that area between Cades Bay and Newcastle can be heavily economically impacted if you have that traffic developing. But I say one thing. Anyhow, they put down that rural ferry thing, before you get your airport and your seaport, you will never get them. You'll never get them. Because that will remove any need. And there's no funding agency that's going to expand your airport and expand your seaport once you have a rural ferry. All right? And he didn't support it. So when Mr. Isaac came with his idea, after we had gotten the pier and the airport, I supported it. Because the economic needs and the economic impact had not changed. You know who opposed it, Mr. President? You know who opposed it? Ask every one of them over there who opposed it. They know. They know. Mr. Amri opposed it. The Premier of Nevis opposed it. In fact, he has never traveled on Mr. Isaac's boat, the sea bridge. Mr. Brantley has traveled in it as often as he likes. He has never allowed it to stop him from traveling. And I said, that's a good view. Show some maturity there. But the other gentleman, he's never traveled on it because he opposed it. He opposed something that was in the interest of the development of Nevis. He said the ferry must come to Nevis. Well, if I want to travel to St. Kitts quickly, and I know I'm not necessarily a great sailor, why do I want to leave Charlestown to go to Bastia when it takes me 6 minutes or 10 minutes or 20 minutes, boom, boom, and I'm gone in my car? Why? It does not make economic sense. It makes economic sense. And I supported it. And when I got into government, I supported it even further. And the point I'm making, don't make it sound like it is new. If you put down a little pier, or if there are more boats running, that's fine. But the idea is not yours. Your man opposed it. Your man opposed it. Must not take credit for it, man. Mustn't take, and you all need to stand up. Because you see, there's a story out of Africa. You climb on another man's shoulders. You don't start from the ground over and over. Representative one for Charlestown, when he won the election, came to me with a gentleman about some drawings. You know what the drawings were for Charlestown? A community and training center. See him sitting there. A community and training center for Charlestown. I didn't know where the site was. So I asked them where the site was, and I was told the site was there in St. Thomas. They said, well, why do you want a community and training center out of Charlestown? That should be in the middle of Charlestown. But that was not the point. The point was that I was very impressed by Rex Nettleford, had gone to Jamaica, had gone to the Center of Fine Arts, and seen Jamaicans performing at the international level. And I was moved. And I said, we must have one like that in Nevis. And so, and Mr. Hector is down there. Oh, he's gone? No, man, you don't have to abandon me. He's the head, not me. The head can't abandon the tail. Mr. President, I was moved by the whole thing. And so I went as far as Taiwan with Mr. Hector to argue that that was foolishness and we needed to have a proper center for fine arts. And Mr. Brand said they wanted to be paid. Mr. Brand is sitting there. I never paid him. Right? Never paid him. Never paid him. Because this is foolishness. I like Mr. Brand, and I was sorry I had to do it. But that's me. I had to do it. And between the Taiwanese and ourselves, we got an architect out of St. Martin to do that place. You know why I'm saying that? I heard a few weeks ago that Mr. Amri was invited to Nevis by somebody named Devon Leibert to present him with an award for bringing the Fine Arts Theatre to Nevis and for renovating the arts in Nevis. What hypocrisy. What falsehood. What mess. And Mr. Amri shamelessly came and took the award. He could have at least said to the gentleman, not me. Not me. And I am making the point, Mr. President. I'm making the point that we can't continue like this. We can't continue to practice deception. It's not going to take us anywhere. And when you try to demean and diminish one set of people and elevate yourself even falsely, you're not doing yourself any good, and you're not telling the right things to the people of Nevis. How can you then turn around and say that young people must learn and must do well when you set an example for them? Just wanted to make those points, Mr. President, about the ferry. And the same thing happened with the theater. We need to stop it in this country. Now I turn to the debt. And I turn to pages 12 and 13. And I read from section 36. At the end of October 2018, the NIA central government debt stood at $398.58 million, and when coupled with the debt of the statutory bodies amounts to a total debt of $441.98 million. This reflects a 6.18% increase when compared to the total public debt of $416.26 million at the end of 2017. Though the debt has increased slightly, it is in keeping with our debt management objective, which is to obtain the country's gross financing needs at the lowest possible cost with a prudent degree of risk. And then we come to 40. I made the point before, and believe it's worth making again, that this national bank debt is not our new debt. It's not new debt. It is the existing debt inherited by this government, which we have now successfully negotiated. That is what is written in here, not what the minister said. I am reading what's in here. I know what the minister said. I wish to thank the federal government, etc., etc. Now, let us deal with this and with the minister, what the minister said for a start. When the statement was made that it is not new debt, how is that to be interpreted? Because the minister said that it was the debt caused by profligate spending of the NRP, because he said from 2006 to 2013. That's what he said. It's not in here, but he said it. It's not in here. He said it. Am I to understand then that new debt meant that it was not caused by him over this last year, but by the former Minister of Finance and other ministers of finance like me, or is it singling out the NRP? I want that matter to be examined. And he stated about renegotiation. Well, last year I reminded them that we had negotiated for the debt. And we had organized that the debt become a loan. I want to now go to the figures, Mr. President, because it's always good to go to the figures. And we look at give me a minute here. Yeah, okay. So let me look at the debt now. Dealing with real figures. Total. The outstanding government debt, public debt, for 2014, 300, and at the bottom of page 72, sorry, bottom of page 72. The total public sector debt, $363.69 million. That is in 2014. In October 2018, it's $441.98 million, right? So you see the difference there. over a period of 4 years, is something like $80 million. Mr. President, that's the same page. Let us look at the total Nevis Island debt. In 2014, it was $329.16 million. Today it stands at $398.58 million. Outstanding domestic debt to 2014, $275.58 million. October 2018, $355.43 million. In other words, it has increased by $80 million in the last 4 years. Mr. President, the amounts to National Bank, $101 million in 2014, $144 million in 2018. Bank of Nevis, $57 million in 2014, $67 in 2018. Treasury bills, $70 million in 2014, $101 million in 2018. In other words, Mr. President, what you're looking at is an increase in the debt. When we got into government, the debt was about $298 million. We left it at about $353 million or somewhere in that vicinity. I can't remember the exact figures. The point I want to make is that the debt has been climbing over the years. Whether it's NRP or CCM, the debt has been climbing. That we were able to reduce the foreign debt and increase the domestic debt. And they have also reduced the foreign debt and increased the domestic debt, and even have increased the debt in terms of treasury bills. I am not here to criticize or to make a big noise about it, because I expected it. And until we're able to beef up our assets, our long-term assets, until we're able to have serious investments with returns, this will be the case. It will always be the case. But the minister said that we drove up the debt, we'd roughly get wastes of money, that we were spending like we were spending irresponsibly between 2006 and 2013. And that is supposed to be, again, an election ploy given to the people of Nevis. But then, when he came to crime, Mr. President, he said that the NRP had used money to build the police station in Cotton Ground, the barracks at Bath, at Butlers, and I'm not sure he said this, but in Gingerland. And that they continue, and that's great. But how do you reconcile the fact that he made an earlier statement that we were wanton in our spending and then turn around and allied with us in taking credit for the fighting of crime? It doesn't work that way. And you see, when you set out to deceive, these are the kind of mistakes you make. These are the kind of mistakes you make. Because you're so fixed in your mind that you have to bash the other side, that you say all kind of things. But when you look at the figures don't reflect what he stated yesterday. And that is why whoever wrote the budget did not put those things in there, and he added them. He added them. And I'm saying it doesn't help. It does not help anybody It does not help anybody, and certainly no person, no one alone standing by himself has all the knowledge in the world. No one. No one. And it is uncalled for because nothing has changed. In fact, something has changed. Something has changed because as far as I see, we now find ourselves in a situation we are going to the public and we are going to tell the public, give us receipts so that we can put some pressure on Sinkits when we go down there. I don't know what kind of politics is that. I'm sure that's not economics. And that is not running the country. That is not running the country. So you want to suck sweets and whistle? You want to take one position now and take another position another time? No. Doesn't work that way. Doesn't work that way. And it is time we stop in this little country. We all know each other. We all know each other in this little country. Some of us are related. We taught some people. Some of us were involved in cricket. Some of us go to the same church. All kind of things. All kind of things. If you want to be in one political party and I want to be in another political party, why can't we get along? I understand in the Bahamas, 2 lawyers who worked in a firm, they were partners. One was prime minister, the other was opposition. They went to the polls, the opposition became the prime minister, and the prime minister became the opposition, and they continued their practice. But what's wrong with us in Nevis? Why we have to try to demonize each other and destroy each other when our country is in its knees? The country is begging. The country is like a mendicant. That's how we are. And we are at the mercy of politicians in Sinkits right now, and we don't seem to know. You think giving you 3 seats can make you not be at the mercy? You think they're not going to divide you one way or the other? I don't want to go into that. And I won't go into that. But we know, I know what I know, you know what you know. We all know what we know. We all know what we know. Many years ago, I told Malcolm, back in 1996, I said, Malcolm, he and I were friends. I said, when we go Sinkits, let's not fight. Let's not fight in Sinkits. Let's keep our fight local. And I always believe that. Keep it local. And you don't have to fight to the point where you become enemies. I don't want a political enemy. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. And most of them who had problems with me died. I don't know how they died. I don't know who killed them. But they died. The bitterness inside of them must have killed them. That's all I could say. Mr. President, that is the matter of the debt. Now let us look at international investment, pages 17 to 18. And before I move on from the debt will continue to grow. Nothing can be solved in a matter of a year. 10 years from now, you're going to have a debt. What is important is to be able to control the debt and to demonstrate that by investment activity on Nevis, you are raising your revenue income to deal with that debt. That is what is necessary at this particular point. Pages 17 to 18. '51. We are cognizant that foreign direct investment must be injected into our economy. To this end, my administration continues to have ongoing discussions with a number of proposed developers who are indicating an interest in making substantial investment in our economy. Now, We mentioned the Wyndham Grand Resort. We mentioned the Oman. We mentioned the Oasis. I'm not familiar. And we mentioned Candy Resorts. And we mentioned the Four Seasons Estates. And we also mentioned Nisbet's Recession Inn. I wouldn't be totally familiar with what is going on with some of these. But, and I am told that the Wyndham is well on its way. I think the minister said financing has been found. Has the government been paid for its property over at Patworks? Has the church been paid for its property over at Patworks? If they have found, has the lawyers locally been paid for their hard work? Are we to accept that because it's stated in the budget that it is true, Mr. President? I would be happy to see the Wyndham. I told the investors some time ago I have no problems with investment. But we need to know the facts. And we need to know the state of play. Some of the investors support one party. Some of the investors support the other party. I really don't know. And they will employ people. So I don't know that it's to my benefit to have a problem with it. I want to say to the minister, because he made a phrase here about paradise, El Paradiso. He made a phrase that is typical him. He put that inside here. How it was allowed to rot and this and that and the other. Well, Mr. Minister, I must remind you that I was involved in the sale of Paradise. I must remind you that I was involved in the purchase of the lands at Paradise. I must remind you that I sat on the church board, the Anglican church board, and encouraged the Anglican church to sell an acre of land, and Mr. Kawaja to send 9 or 10 acres of land to the investor for the development of Paradise. I have to remind you of all those. I didn't get a penny for any of those actions. It was done in the interest of the people of Nevis. Harold Lynn was the original investor. I must remind you that Harold and I spoke many, many times, and his wife, dear wife, Christine. And I gave them as much help as I could to get that project done. He ran into difficulty because he wanted to have this Arawak or Carib thatch roof that wasn't working. And the property was there because stuff was falling from the roof on the people. They had a problem with it. And along came this Englishman, same Englishman you know very well. You know him very well, my friend. Same Englishman, and when I say this, he knows what I'm saying. Same Englishman, I think his first name is James, I'm not going to say anymore. And he came along, and we worked together. There were problems with the sale. Problems. We worked together, and the sale was completed. And we sought to give him as much help as possible. You didn't have to state this, you didn't have to make this statement about it was rotting and this and that and the other. I know you have a problem, but you don't have a problem with me because I was not the hurricane that undermined the land there. I did not openly try to prevent the development. I did not have an argument with planning, whether planning did it right or wrong. I was not interested in that. I was not interested in that. And I was not part of that. If you were caught for whatever reason, or some persons related to you were caught, that is your business, not mine. I wouldn't bring it to Parliament. I wouldn't discuss it here. I'm not into that kind of behavior. But I think you too should exercise some caution when you're trying to impress. Because I've been there long. I was there from the beginning. I know the facts. You notice? I only got 1 page of notes. Only 1 page of notes I have. It's all inside here. I remember the whole story. And that's how it is with me. I remember. So you don't have to come here and impress and carry on, because I really don't want to be saying some of these things that I've been forced to say this morning. It serves no purpose. It serves no purpose. I mean, for us to be getting at each other, don't we want Nevis to develop? Isn't that our aim, our common aim, and our common goal? I don't understand it. Don't understand it at all, as if we weren't doing anything about it. And Rest Haven, and the government took over Rest Haven. My friend, Rest Haven. You know what happened to Rest Haven, Mr. President? Rest Haven was damaged by Hurricane Hugo in 1989. The Nisbets tried to rehabilitate Rest Haven, but they knocked down their kitchen. If you knock your kitchen down, what is going to happen? How are you going to serve food? What is the purpose of the restaurant? Did NRP do that? Did CCM do that? Let me tell you what NRP did. The lands were leased to Mr. Nisbet by Robert Bradshaw. And we, led by Simeon Daniel, got him to buy the land so that he had land. The land belonged to him. He's a Nevisian. That is what NRP did. The land belonged to him, a freehold. And people need to know the history. They knocked their kitchen down. Nobody told them to do it. And then they tried to get funds while the rooms were in fallow. They tried to get funds to develop, to restore Rest Haven, and they fell into the hands of Rams. Not the government, Rams. I knew Keisha well because on the bank of Nevis I sat next to him and we would talk about it. And Keisha expressed that he was no longer interested in putting up any hotel in Nevis. He wanted an investor to do it. And that's how the government came to be involved. It was not as if we were trying to take over anything from anybody. When you spoke of the owners, I wonder who you meant. Do you mean Rams? Do you mean the Nisbets? Who are the owners? Because as far as I know, Rams are the owners. As far as I know, Rams are the owners. And I found myself in a very ironic position because Spurgeon and I are friends. I was a teacher and he was a student, but we are friends. His father is from Cotton Ground. We know each other. And Mr. Nisbet was very kind to me when I went to Rest Haven to have a drink. Sometimes he'll allow me to have the drink free. Didn't have a problem at all. And I have always supported Nevisians in terms of investment. Always. And Spurgeon will call me from America many times and appeal to me. And I had no answer because it involved money. What was I going to tell Mr. Rams? Go along? And leave his property? Is that what I was going to tell Mr. Rams? I couldn't tell him that. The truth is, I never really, personally, supported any government developing the hotel. I never did. And maybe that's one of the reasons why it remained there. I was always hoping that the Nisbets will be able to find some money and get their foot back in. I even discussed that with Mr. Kisho. So don't come. You see, you warp history. You don't know the history anyway. And you come and you say things as if it is the beginning, it is the genesis of everything. It's not so. It's not so. And people are not unkind. And people understand that we're Nevisians and we must support each other. Don't give a wrong impression. Don't do it. Because I could have easily said Mr. Amri was there for 18 years and did nothing. Well, what is that worth to me, Mr. President? It doesn't happen. Mr. Amri was there for 18 years and nothing happened. Everybody knows. I'm not here to attack Mr. Amri. I don't want to attack him. We're not so young now. Neither he nor I so young now. What's the sense? There's no sense. Mr. President, I'm just saying it's not necessary. Go about your business, man. You're the premier of the country and you're Minister of Finance. You were there with Mr. Amri too and you all did nothing. So don't make it appear as if somebody wasn't doing anything and I have now come and I'm doing. It doesn't work for good relationships. It really doesn't, Mr. President. we come to the Amman. We come to the Amman. And I really hope that the people of the Amman have found the money now. And I would say this, Mr. President, I know that the Minister of Finance in his personal capacity has done everything to help the Amman. I was working on one side, and he was working on the other. I know he was working, and I was working, because we wanted it to happen. We wanted it to happen. And why did I want it to happen? Because the Amman, combined with the Four Seasons, would have made Nevis special. We would have been a special place. We were, in those days, I was trying to drive for us to be not like Anguilla, but like St. Bart's. That was my hope, and that was my ambition, to take us to the highest level, because it's always going to be difficult to bring people to Nevis. It was always going to be difficult. That is what I was after. And I was glad for his assistance. And right now, if the Amman is to come, I will work in a private capacity as much as possible to make sure the Amman comes, because it will be to the benefit of Nevis. So we don't have to do each other any harm. It's not necessary. I know the man well. I've been to his home many times in Nevis. I've met with him at Four Seasons. I've met with him in St. Kitts. We have talked on the phone. And I thought at one time we had it on with the SIDF fund. Didn't happen. But you know, I remember very well. I remember very well. I went to the Gingerland High School for their annual celebrations. And I stated there that there will be a hotel in Gingerland by the name of Amman. Children laugh. Parents laugh. Then Mr. Amory got up and said, he'll never live to see an Amman in Gingerland. I want you, Mr. Minister, to remember that. When it opens, make sure you give him a front seat, but give me one too. I want to sit next to him. You know why? I am a man of action. I get things done. Position don't mean nothing to me. You notice when I finish and take off these, I put on my short pants and my little merino shirt and my flappers? That's Joseph Perry, man. That's Joseph Perry, and I'll never change. I don't want to be sitting by the queen and the king and eating supper and watching to see which knife they take up and which glass they drink from and so on. Not interested in that. Not interested. I just want it to happen. Okay, it'll make a big difference. And it will cause another hotel to want to come to Nevis. And I say, I want me and he to sit down together. So I could look at him and say, you old rascal, you.
Member.
No, Mr. President,
no. You have said it already, but no. Could you kindly, please. No. I am on the floor right now. Please. You could stand if you care to. But it is not nice, and it is not parliamentary to call people rascals.
Oh. That doesn't
inside this house.
Okay, it doesn't mean he's not a rascal, right?
I don't know. I don't know. So, could you kindly take it back?
You want me to take back he's a rascal? Here's what I'll take back, Mr. President. That I said it in the House. Shouldn't say it in the House.
No.
But to say he's not a rascal, Lord, you're asking me to lie. So could I take back that I shouldn't say it in the House, sir?
Please.
Thank you. I take it back in the House. Mr. President?
You may proceed.
Thank you, sir. I don't mean to upset you. You don't need to get upset either.
I am not upset.
Okay, great. Mr. President, we speak of the investments, the geothermal. I don't have much to say about the geothermal. I've said before, and I'm not going to repeat myself. But I'll simply say this. In terms of development, investment, there was a vision. And that vision was the Amman, linked with the Four Seasons, geothermal as a powerful driving force in this country, and the development of the Long Point Pier. The Chinese looked at Bahamas in the north and Trinidad in the south, and we are smack in the middle for the development of China. And believe me, no matter what the United States does, China is gone. China is gone. And China will be the #1 economy in this world in 10 years' time, 5 years' time, maybe already. Can't stop them, especially with the behavior of the US at the moment. They will have to exist with China. It is for us now to know our position. Not intellectually or philosophically, I believe in terms of democracy, etc., but business-wise. All I'll tell you, in 1983, we were advised by the British to join with China, to have diplomatic services in China, not with Taiwan. And I leave it there. I leave it there. Mr. President, pages 17 to 18 again. They mentioned on 46 about going to China, Taiwan, to learn about their culture of business and their culture of work. I want to say something to you, my friend. If that's what you're going to China for, you better don't go. If you want to deal with work ethic, you better deal with it here. You better deal with it here, not over there. Not going to happen. Chinese are Chinese and Nevisians are Nevisians. If you want to deal with work ethic, start with the parents. Start in kindergarten. Start in the primary schools. Start in the high schools. Teach people love for country. Teach people ethics. Teach them the values of hard work, honesty, and decency. That's how you're going to change that, not by going to China. It can't happen that way. It's the first time in my life I hear that you go to China to learn those things. Can't learn them there. Here. You know, look at Brownhill Communications. Why is it, in spite of the pay, relatively good, so few divisions are there and Dominicans are there? Is it because they went to China and we didn't go? Because they went to Taiwan and we didn't go? No. It's far more fundamental than that. Divisions seem for some reason now to be afraid of hard work. Challenges. We have to get back to that. Do not be afraid. Buckle up, buckle down. When divisions built St. Martin, they built St. Thomas. They went to America and did well. That same application we need to use at home. I was driving around the island the other night, and I picked up a gentleman. He said that he grew up in Nevis, not from Nevis, but grew up in Nevis. And he said the problems with Nevisians is that they sit back and do nothing. And when the aliens or foreigners come here and do well, they begin to complain and say they're not from here. Take that for what it's worth. Take it for what it's worth and see how we could change it. Change it in the schools. I'll tell you something else I learned as a teacher and as someone in competition with my peers. When children were bright, in class. They were beaten up. They were ridiculed. They were made to shut up because they were not supposed to demonstrate they were bright. It is one of the sad reflections of us. We don't promote our best. We try to trample them down to the ground. And that is what we need to change, not go to Taiwan. That is what we need to change. And don't promote somebody because you like them or because it's Joseph Parry's child. Promote the person because the person has potential and the person is good. That is what we need to do in this country. And that is why it is important that we give everybody a fair chance. A fair chance. The good God did not say that brightness, intelligence, or good behavior is restricted to your children alone. Anybody's child can be a criminal, and anybody's child can be a genius. That is how the good Lord has created us. So give everybody a fair chance. And let us not pull down and pull back. And I know that I live that. There are people in this sanctum who could say I live it. There are people all around who could say I have done it. And that is what I say we need to do. That is what I say we need to do. Give everybody a fair chance. And don't bother about the politics and all the different things. Everybody can't support you. And everybody won't support me. That's how it is. Now, Mr. President, I turn to revenues, and I turn to page 69. Page 69. I won't talk about the deficit between revenue and expenditure because it is obvious that in spite of what we say every year, the deficit gets wider and wider. The VAT seems to be falling. The VAT seems to be falling. Taxes on domestic goods and services, 40 million in 2015, 30 million in 2018. Taxes on international trade transactions, 40 million in 15, 35 in 18. That's not a good sign. That is not a good sign, Mr. President. All the talk we're talking, the economy is not showing its robustness and is not showing that level of growth that we keep talking about, what the central bank says and IMF says and the World Bank says, and we can't even see the documents. Mr. President, tax falling, the tax is also falling. Non-tax revenue, 33 million in 2015, 29 million in 2018. Financial services, just 13 million in 14, 11.4 this year, 13.26 at the end of last year. In other words, there's no growth. There's no growth. There's a long, long story in this presentation about what we're going to do about financial services. Again, I am not going into any great detail because we know what is happening with financial services and we know the pressures that we are under. Up to the other day, I heard people talking about money laundering in Nevis, pointing their fingers at people who they say are doing money laundering, talking about institutions they say that are involved in money laundering. Mr. President, when those stories begin to circulate, watch out. We might be off the blacklist, and we might be meeting every protocol that we have been asked to meet. The truth is, it doesn't matter. It does not matter. Financial services is a problem to the OECD and to the United States of America. I find it so strange because one of the reasons why these international banks are pulling out is the high risk factor. Pressure that has been brought to bear on them in Canada and the United States of America. And, you know, I was also reading about Deutsche Bank. Billions of dollars money laundered in Deutsche Bank. Did I hear them shut it down? They give it a fine, a smack on the fingers, and they continue. Billions of dollars. Do we have a branch in Nevis? Do you have a branch in the Caribbean? I don't know. I'm not aware of it. But you think it's only Deutsche Bank alone involved in money laundering? It seems to me if money laundering is to take place, it must take place in the big countries, not here. I always wondered Stanford. And I asked myself the question, if Stanford was doing his business in the United States of America, would he have been in jail today, Mr. President? I am looking, and maybe because in the opposition I can say, Saudi Arabia has all kind of deals in America. Booking hotel for 100 days. Eh? You know whose hotel they're booking for 100 days? Millions of dollars spending in America. And nothing is being done about it. Maybe nothing can be done about it. Every day we see Rachel, whatever her name is, and Joe Scarborough and his wife come on, and Don Lemon, and they come on and they talk and they talk and they talk, and nothing is being done. Nothing is being done. And the Democrats try one way, and the Republicans block them. And poor little Eastern Caribbean, we are being beaten to shreds. You think that if I had $100 million and I want to launder it, I'll come to Nevis? No, man. Nevis is too small. Bank of Nevis, everybody got number business. Wouldn't do that. I'm going to Lloyd's. I'm going to Barclays, Deutsche Bank. That's where I'm going. That's where I'm going. The big banks. It is a mockery. It's really a mockery. You want to open an account. My friend Troy is sitting at the till. I got to open an account. What is your name? And I'm looking at Troy. What is my name? You know my name. What is your name? You have to tell me your name. It's so foolish. And you go to Delaware, and in a matter of half an hour, you have an account open. You need to have 2 IDs. If you don't have 2 IDs, you can't open an account. Oh, rubbish. And all of us sit down and allow ourselves to be used like that for what they do. Every time they fall up, we pay the penalty as if it's we are the ones who are falling up. It's a sad, sad reflection, sir. Sad, sad reflection. So here we are. Here we are with deficits. And I work out that for this year we will get transfers at least $32 million to balance the budget. Last year was $59 million. The year before was $35. Not good. I've made those points already. I'm not going to make them again. But you look at the expenditure, and the expenditure rises and falls, not according to our revenue, but according to when there's an election. Very interesting. The revenue, the expenditure rises and falls according to when you have an election. And yet the minister is going to talk about our waste. For instance, in 2015, total expenditure $149 million. In 2017 election year, $204 million. Where did the money come from? Where did the money come from? We don't have to pay it back? It was NRP who spent it? When you talk about flagrant waste, we need to stop it. The information is here. The information is here. The debt is not being run up because we are not making enough money, but election time we spend what we don't have. We spend what we don't have. And the CCM has done it. CCM has done it in 2017, and I'm not quarreling about it because I suppose we have done it too. Not quarreling about it. But the point is, let's face the fact. Let's face the fact. And don't talk about NRP is irresponsible when the figures here indicate what you have done less than a year ago. Less than a year ago, Mr. President, you run up the debt. Face it, accept it, and find a way to deal with it. You know, I see here that expenditure is going to drop in 2019. But at the same time, I don't see. And I see here that personal emoluments will drop. And goods and services will drop. And I put how? 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 How are you going to reduce expenditure and personal emoluments? And how are you going to reduce the amount spent on goods and services? And here's why I ask the question, Mr. President. Personal emoluments mean civil servants. You can fire them? You can send them home? I don't think so. In fact, one of the interesting things I noted last year was that more people were employed by government last year than when we left government in 2013. And with the election coming up, I know the pressure is going to be on to find jobs for people, whether they cut grass or they walk up and down the road or whatever they do. You will find something for them to do until the election is over, and then they go back to their bad ways. That is how it goes. So, Mr. President, don't bother put this thing inside here. This is cooked. This information, it has to be cooked. Has to be cooked. And it smells. It smells. Because there's no way you can reduce personal emolument. There's no way you can reduce goods and services. And I'm talking on page 69. Page 69, Mr. President. This information is not accurate. It is not accurate. And we cannot continue to play around with figures as if people don't understand. Because there it is, the figures are saying one thing, and the minister is saying something else. You know what? I have worked out the best thing to do is when the minister has finished reading, take up the book, go to the back, and work on the figures, and you'll find the information. What you get from the minister is fluff. Fluff. Lovely words and lovely phrases, meaning nothing. These figures indicate a serious crisis in the government, faced by the government. And let me tell you this. If you think that the guys in Sinkis don't know, and if you think that they don't know that they have the upper hand, fool yourself. Fool yourself. Fool yourself. One of these days they might join together against you. One of these days parties in Sinkis might decide enough is enough. Enough is enough. So my advice, let us learn to swim on our own. Let us learn to paddle our own canoe, and let us learn to steer our ship. Mr. President, in local infrastructure, the road between Cotton Ground and Newcastle, the airport. I would like to know how we are going to approach the road, what you're going to do with the road, the engineering applications that you will use for that road. That road was done in great haste back in 2000 and I think it was 2001. It was done in great haste. I remember a politician from St. Kitts who didn't support me, but he felt we would be wiped out, and called me and said, boy, you need to contact so-and-so from Barbados, because the kind of monies that are being used to build that road, they're going to wipe out NRP. I called, and I remember I got $400,000 for the campaign. Imagine what the other side got. Imagine this is somewhere we went into pockets as well. Mr. President, there was no proper engineering application. That road, part of it, is on a spring. And if you're going to do that road and you're serious about it, you better get some engineers to advise you how to ensure that the substructure is safe. Otherwise, it is going to jump up again. The water is going to lift it up again. I remember when I spoke about the road through Government Road, my friend had a laugh, and I heard he was on the radio talking about it the other day. I sometimes wonder if he, having gone to engineering school, if he understands that putting down a road is not all to it. And that there are certain things about drainage and certain things about soil structure and certain things like that that require engineering skills. And I might go there and tell you do this, that, and the other, but I don't know the engineering part of it. I understand the road in Government Road, when the rain comes, water run in the middle of the road still, you know, in the Hamilton area. It's things like those I was trying to avoid. You know, the funny thing is, people who went to university, I was in government when we sent them. Our dream was to build up the public works department. We bought the equipment from the Kuwaitis so they can build public works. We were hoping that public works would become a force to be reckoned with in this country. And that was made into a political football. I remember many years ago when we were doing the road there by TDC and the Craft House. We had an engineer from the States, and he had a particular approach to do the road. And all the local contractors said, no, that's not the way to do it. We know how to do it. And he did that road the way he said it should be done. The road is still there as good as ever. You have to respect engineers. You have to respect experience. And there's nothing wrong with it. But yet, I am reading here now in the budget, the same budget, that they're going to use external operators to do the roads because they have the money, and that will ease the strain of the government. You'll work with a deal, they'll do the roads, and you will pay over a period of time. That sounds like a good reason, but is that the reason? Is that the reason? Why that reason didn't come up all the time? It's not yesterday, last week, last month, 10 years ago that these people have been there doing that. It's not new. There's nothing new about it. So what is behind all this? What happened? The minister don't have the power he used to have? Is that it? Where are we going back in that direction? Every other country makes sure that their major roads are done with engineering experience and input. But because I wanted that in Nevis, I was foolish. And so when you drive up Government Road, the electricity poles are in the road. 3 feet in the road. 3 feet of the road can't be used. What a great job. You think I'm going to blame Public Works? No. I'm going to blame the engineers. I'm blaming the engineers who work with Public Works. Those are who I'm going to blame. Because since they knew so much and they knew everything, they should have made sure that it was done properly. You drive up past the hospital and you see where the electric poles are. What's that? That was done to me? What? The poles? Oh my God. But I didn't know that you were crazy, but I think you're crazy. I think. Well. Boy, I can't go with you. Huh? Wait, the same thing I said? Same thing I said? We did that? Huh? All right. If you think so. If you think so. I know when the road was paved and I was in government. Oh, well. It started under me. It started under me. It started under me. It started under me. I would have never allowed that to happen. Come on. You say so? You say so? So the upper part where the water running in the middle of the road, you did that? And Charleston is still under threat from floods. Still under threat from floods. Yes, Mr. President. I was talking about local infrastructure and he said wish list. So wish list. We all know that even if money fell from heaven, that these projects couldn't be finished next year. We know that. We know that. And in a way, it is a promise. It's a promise that is being made to the people of Nevis. Give me all three, and you're going to get money for running out of the ground, man. You're going to get the money tree. Go shake it down. There's a money tree in St. Kitts that we got growing and waiting. Don't work so. Maybe you can fool people, but I don't know if you can fool people all the time. Oh, no. I want to say this. When you're investing, you need to lead. You cannot follow. The matter of crime, I'm not going to speak too much about that. I believe crime is something that we all should have a common position on. You can't allow the criminals to divide us. And things are getting far more serious now than in the past. And I'm glad that we are trying to do something about it. But I raise this issue. And the minister says that we are not responsible for crime. But I would suggest to you that you take responsibility for Nevis. Whether you have the authority or not, there's something in the Constitution there that gives you some authority. Work it. And you have the Minister of Ecclesiastical Affairs and Nevis Affairs in St. Kitts. Work him. Work him. By the way, what does the Minister of Nevis Affairs mean? I never understood what it meant. Since 1983, we didn't have a Minister of Nevis Affairs. It's an insult, you know. An insult to the people of Nevis. But anyway, that is his name, so he's over you. You're the Premier, he's the Minister of Nevis Affairs. So you have to answer to him. And since you do, maybe you can talk to him so he can find a way for us to move forward in terms of the fight against crime. I want to say this, though. The fight against crime is not a short-term fight. And it goes back again to values, to training, to programs, to parenting, and all those factors. It's a long-term thing. It's a generational thing. And it's something that we need to find a solution to over time. I don't have to go into that either, Mr. President, because I've spoken about it before. How much time do I have?
You have 6 more minutes.
6?
6 minutes.
6 more minutes?
6 more minutes of your allotted time.
Oh, okay. Do I have a, Mr.
No, you go on with your 6 minutes, and then when the time comes and you want to...
No, I have to know how to steer, as the Jamaicans say. I don't know how to steer. I believe, sir, that you have to link crime and education. The solution of crime has a lot to do with education. I'm asking you, I'm asking us to examine the education system. I'm asking us to examine the education system. And for us to ask the real question, is education meeting the needs of the people of Nevis? You see, again, I don't want to steal the thunder of Gingerland High School, or any high school for that matter. But I have learned long ago not to measure performance in terms of those who get O-levels and CAPE subjects. That is no measurement. In fact, if I were to go to the back before I come to the front, many people with CAPE subjects, you put them in a job and they can't do it. They cannot do it. They do not know what to do. They do not know what to do, and to me, they're not being taught to think. They're not being taught to analyze. I'm not blaming them. It's not their fault. It's not their fault. But the education system is like a factory now, where you just produce. But you're not educated in the Latin word educo, to lead out. They're not being educated to think, to analyze, to be creative. That is what education is about. When you ask certain questions, they have a blank face. That does not make any sense. That does not make any sense. Furthermore, Let me tell you something, and I had this discussion this morning before I came to work. We put a lot of stress on education, good. But first of all, the education, you must ask yourself, is this the right education for the children? Is this the right education? Are you catering to the needs of all? Because they can pass English, but they can't speak English? They don't seem to know the use of mathematics because nobody has told them. They don't know the use of history because history is not being taught the way it should be taught. Literature is abandoned, that great subject that can cause you to reach so great heights. They are abandoned. Are the teachers being trained to be surrogate parents? Are we going to give them more pay? Because they need to be surrogate parents. They need to have that affinity with the children. You take up somebody 17, 18, 19 years old who just come out of sixth form and show them, bam, to teach a class. They don't know what to do. It's not their fault. They don't know how to relate. They're still children up to a point. They can't help the little children. And everything is out of control. So what are we doing about that? What are we doing about the education system? Question, why is the sixth form still part of the high school? I fought against it, and teachers have fought me down because it gives prestige to them. What prestige? What prestige? The sixth form, so they're big people. They're grown people. They're supposed to graduate by themselves. You're a big woman and big man in uniform, like soldiers. Don't make no sense. Don't make no sense. And Troy, I'm not even talking about you, so you don't have to get upset. I'm not dealing with you. I'm talking about a system. I'm dealing with a system. Those people need to begin to learn to study on their own, need to understand that even if they don't have a teacher or a lecturer, they can pass an exam. Huh? Fine. Fine. They can pass an exam. We have a lot of work to do. So when we talk about this glorious thing about education, it's not so glorious, believe me. It's hard to change, because I'll tell you the teachers will fight you down. Yeah, they'll fight you down. You try to get them to go in a particular direction. They got a problem with you. They have a problem with you. They have a problem with me. They have a problem with us. But you need some serious thinking. And that is the part of the problem that we have dealt with crime. You send a child to school, you tell that child, put on a blue shirt and a khaki pants and tell them in secondary school, and they go there and they don't learn anything, and in 5 years, they're 17, they ought to kill you or kill me because they feel they have been deprived. And they have been deprived. They have been deprived. I don't blame them. On
that note, your time is up, so remember, if you
what should I do
desire,
then?
You ask for whatever time. And
ask the Premier? Mr.
You
Premier?
Ask for, no, you ask me.
Oh, you?
Yes, and then I would take it across to
Mr. President. Can I have an extra 10 minutes, sir? Yeah, I don't talk for talking's sake.
Question is that the member has asked for additional 10 minutes. Those in favor? Aye. Those against?
Thank you, gentlemen. That's the way we must operate. So, Mr. President, I said there's this link with crime and education. And we need something about it. And if they don't want to do it in St. Kitts, we have to take the lead over here. Their situation is worse than ours. But somehow it is not being done. And it's no sense to have these seminars and bring in all kind of people to talk to us. That ain't solving the crime. That's papering over the problem. And you know something, Mr. President, I walk with my wallet now because they say you have to have your ID, your license inside there. Otherwise, you can be charged $250. So I do my best to have my ID so nobody charge me. Policeman gave me a lecture the other day. Say, do you know you can be summoned? Do you know you can be summoned? You don't have a license? I say, you know what? I ain't going to let it happen to me again. But it's a waste of time. The criminals are not going to be caught. I will be caught on you, not the criminals. You think the criminals stupid? You bring in the SSU here, and the criminals go underground, and crime is solved. Wow, great. And they go back home, and the criminals come out again like crabs when rain falls. Oh, yes. It is a waste of time. We need to stop these things and be serious. Be serious. I mean, my blood ran cold when I heard what happened to John Yarwood. John has contributed so much to Nevis. Should have never happened to him. Never happened to him. Never. Never. Can't have this kind of behavior. And you know, John might be white, but they didn't say a white man. They say a man with money. Say, Hazel, they might think she has money. Yeah, they might think you have money. They might think you have money. They think politicians have money. As soon as they become a politician, you're rich. You got you're worth $1 million or more. Any one of us could be struck down, Mr. President. Any one of us could be robbed and we make a wrong move. You put a guy with a gun who's frightened. Yeah? He has a gun in his hand and he's frightened. And you make a wrong move, he's going to pull the trigger on the gun. He might miss, he might catch. You don't know. We don't know. And we need to understand these things. So we need to do something about the matter now. Understand that children are not foolish, and they know when teachers are not taking them on. They know when they're not being taught. They know when the subject matter has nothing to do with them. These are the things we need to do. And all I will say is for you to sit down and work it out. I'm not here to teach and preach to anybody. I speak about health very briefly. I speak about health very briefly. I understand, Mr. Minister, that you got $167,000 US from the Taiwanese to deal with the machines there. What do they call them again?
Dialysis.
Dialysis machines. And you sat down there and allow machines worth $200,000 to rot. And you get a check from the Taiwanese for $167,000. I remember when you made a statement about going to Guyana, when you made a statement about Taiwan is going to make sure we have good equipment, and we're going to have maybe 4 machines and 6 machines because 2 machines is not enough. And now all you get is a check for $167,000 US. So how many machines are you going to buy? Who's going to provide the additional funds to set up these machines? Who are going to train the people? Where the money is going to come from? All those questions have to be answered. And you say that you put it on your wing and that is going to revolutionize. It's not going to revolutionize anything. You buy a car, you have an old car, you don't maintain it, you buy a new car and you just come end up like the old car. You have to maintain it. So if you're going to make the hospital what you say you're going to make it, you could have made it without those new buildings. Because it's a matter of the technical process, the matter of the machines, and then you put them into the new building. If you have a new building, make sure that it's properly stocked. Make sure the right machines are in there. Make sure the doctors are trained to use the machines. And you know what is very important about health? Aftercare. That is one of the problems we have. Aftercare. No sense you operate on me and leave me up there. I'm not staying up there. I'm not going up there. Not going up there, Mr. President. Because do you have the aftercare to keep me alive? Do you have the aftercare? If you can't keep me alive, what is the sense you operate on me? Don't make no sense. Don't make no sense. And so, Mr. President, I am saying that I want to hear details. I want to hear what will really happen. I am pleased to see the doctors have been employed. I know that we sent many doctors many students to do medicine in Cuba. What I would like to see, though, I would like to see them go on to do further studies, postgraduate studies in certain areas. We can't have the greatest hospital in the world, but we certainly can have a good service. We certainly can have a good service in certain areas. And I would like to see that. I was very pleased when I heard the minister talking about Dr. Leibert from Rice's, because I had a hand in ensuring that Dr. Lybert became a surgeon, a brain surgeon. I had a hand in that, and a big hand too, because some people didn't like it, some people didn't want it, but I insisted it be done. And there he is. And you know, that is a formula that you can use. You can have in these small islands cooperative working together, heart surgeon, brain surgeon, people like those who would not want to be based here because they wouldn't get any practice, not enough practice, but who can move from island to island and give you the kind of service that you need or get you to a place like in Jamaica. So I would want to recommend that. I would want to recommend that we continue down that road and that we train our surgeons and we train our nurses. I was shocked to hear that we are importing nurses. Why are we importing nurses? You don't have enough? But people are not interested in nursing anymore? Yeah, but the nurses, man. The thing is, did I tell you anything was wrong with it? Yeah, I'm asking what happened to our people, what happened to our nurses. I won't even go any further there. All right? Yeah. I leave it not for me, but for you, because you make a comment there and I don't think you should make it. That's why I stop. I'm not here to cause you to say things you shouldn't say. I'm working with you. I'm working with you. Mr. President, I think it is always good to use your own. And it is very useful if we can find a way to encourage our people to go into nursing. I always thought that there would have been a problem. When you say a nurse must have English, history, biology, mathematics, and so on, as you got a problem. Any division who gets mathematics and 5 subjects don't want to be any nurse. They want to be a doctor. So, you all have to find a way. Nurses don't have to have 10, 20 subjects to do a great job. They don't have to be. There are some great nurses, some of them are my close family. They didn't have all those subjects, but they cared. And they worked diligently. Did a great job. So, something you should look at. Mr. President?
Yes.
Having said all those, let me summarize. I want to say, sir, I want to say that the exercise of budgeting has its place in government. It is supposed to be the tool that outlines the plans for the following year, a tool that identifies expenditure and identifies revenue. I am not sure that this has been done as effectively as I had hoped. As I said, it seemed more like a manifesto than a budget. I am happy to see that an attempt has been used to look at long-term investment, but again, I'm not satisfied that it is substantial and that it will happen. I haven't seen anything new. I have seen here some mention made of tourism and this new flight. And again, I had to laugh because the Minister of Finance lambasted me and said that I wanted the airport to run down because the name was Vance Amory Airport International. And I said, really? That's what politics come to when I'm dragged to the ground, that I'm so petty and small-minded that I'll run an airport down. I noticed how cleverly he put it. In spite of the fact that we want to improve the airport at Nevis, we have something coming from Robert Llewellyn Bradshaw Airport. Very cleverly put. Very cleverly put. Oh yeah, we walk in on the Nevis Airport, but in the meantime, I think it's really depending on. Yeah. Mr. President, it takes more than tricks and technicalities and words to get practical impact. And I believe that the minister and his team need to have discussions with all sorts of people to see if we can get the right package for the island of Nevis, because the day will come when we will need it. Mr. President, I would like to see, lastly, that we seek to develop our country, regardless of who is in government in St. Kitts, that Nevis comes first in our minds, that it is something that we place in our psyche again, and that is what I ask for. Finally, Mr. President, I now confess to you that I am not in the best of health. I had to take 2 Advil to come here yesterday, and that's why I reached late. I apologize for that. And that I didn't know whether I'll make it this morning or not. But sometimes the will is greater than the physical side of things. And I'm glad to see that I made it to the end. I felt the need to speak in the House. I felt the need to speak my mind. I believe this is my last Christmas address. I believe that. I've been around long enough for me to move on to kinder, more gentle things and leave the politics and the roughing and toughing and tumbling of politics to those who enjoy it at this particular time. So in saying all that, sir, I want to first wish you a very happy Christmas, Merry Christmas, and great tidings for the Christmas season. I want to wish the members on the other side, since I believe, and I hope I don't die before next year, but I do believe I won't be here, that I wish you all the best for Christmas, you and your family, and that you enjoy it in peace and harmony and goodwill. The Sergeant at Arms, sir, I wish you all the best for you and your family, and hope that you have a good time for Christmas, and that the guns be silent during Christmas time.
The guns, please.
The clerk, the operators of the cameras, people in the gallery, NNC, I wish you all the best. And I hope we can be gentle and appreciate the meaning of Christmas and behave in the manner that is expected of us this Christmas time. So please you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I rise in support of the bill before this Honorable House, a bill short titled Nevis Appropriations 2019 Ordinance 2018. I think the mover did an excellent job yesterday in putting the bill forward. So I want to say congratulations to him, the Honorable Premier and Minister of Finance. Before I get started, I want to thank God for his blessings upon me and upon all of us, upon the island of Nevis and the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis throughout 2018. I think 2018 has been a good year. It has not been without its challenges, but through it all, we have come through, and God has been good to us here in the Federation. Mr. President, our Premier in his wisdom has charged me with the responsibility for the Ministry of Education, Library, services and information technology. I think this is a futuristic ministry, because we've heard it said many times that education is the future. And of course, we all know that information technology is the way of the future now. There are some who would say that since we all have computers, we have access to the World Wide Web, we have mobile computing, everything is on the cell phone now. In fact, I would need to, with your permission a bit later, go back to my table for my cell phone because I have some information on it. So everything is on the cell phone. So some would say that perhaps the library does not hold as prestigious a place now as it would have held in the past, but I want to differ on that. Because you see, today when you want to find out about your past and our past here in the Federation, one of the places that you have to go to get that information is in the library. And I do not believe that with all the technology, that is something that will change in the future. So 50 or 100 years from now, when all of us, well, most of us, would be gone, those who would be around at that time when they want to find out about us and what we were doing in 2018, the library is the place where they will need to go. So the library is also futuristic. Just like education, just like information technology. And I tend to think I'm a future thinking and futuristic kind of person, so I think it's fitting. you agree, right? 100%. It's a pity that the member opposite had to leave so early, and I would just like to put it on record that, you know, we appreciate him making the effort to be here. I know he said he was not feeling so well, but I think he would have batted a good turn. And I think that there are some things that he would have said in his discourse that we can certainly take to heart, and we can certainly use as we continue to do the business of the people of Nevis. Mr. President, I think the mover of the bill yesterday, he got it right when he spoke about education. He stated on page 41 of the budget, and I've summarized it, if that's okay, so I'll read it from where I have it summarized. My administration places the education of our children at the top of its list of priorities. So he didn't say close to the top or one of the top. He said at the top. And when I learned English, they said the means singular. So I think he got it correct when he said the top. The great Malcolm X once said that education is a passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. And as I was thinking about what I would say today, I wanted something nice to say about, you know, each section under the ministry. So I chose that Malcolm X quote about education. And I saw this banner online about the library, and I couldn't pass it up, so I had to write it down to say it today. To dump the library in the name of budget cuts is like burning down your house to save on the electric bill. And for technology, I quote James Comey. I think we would have heard about him today from the member opposite. He says about technology, technology has forever changed the world we live in. We are online in one way or another all day long. Our phones and computers have become reflections of our personalities, our interests, and our identities. They hold much that is important to us. So, President, when I got to thinking about what to say about education, and I started really going into what we have been doing in the Ministry of Education throughout the year and what our plans are for 2019 and beyond, I realized that I could come here and talk for the rest of the afternoon. Indeed, I could talk all night tonight and continue tomorrow morning, and I still would not have said everything. But in the interest of time, and since I learned at the CSS graduation the other day that it's good to compress what you want to say, touch the highlights, and, you know, people will get the gist of it. So what I'm going to do today is to just highlight, you know, a few of the things that we have done throughout the year and to speak about some of the plans that we have going forward. So, President, before I get into that, I want to say that the education system in Nevis has served us well over many, many years. I think most of us here are testimony to that. Most of us would have come up through the education system. Not a perfect system, but good enough to produce people who have gone all over the world to be great scholars, to be great engineers, to be great at whatever they are doing. And so while not perfect, it has been good and it has served us well over the years. And I want to take the opportunity to commend persons who have worked in education over the years to bring it to where it is today. So, President, it's kind of fitting that we just came out of the graduation exercises for the sixth form, Nevis Sixth Form College, the Charlestown Secondary School, and the Gingerland Secondary School. And I must say, for me, it's been quite the experience. I've never really had to sit up front in the graduations and so on. So doing it for me now has been quite the experience. And coming out of the graduation exercises, it shows that in Nevis, we are doing very well. Indeed, the Gingerland Secondary School remains the top performing school in the Federation by pass percentage. They achieved a 96% pass rate in this year's CSEC examinations. We would have heard the mover of the bill yesterday mention Mr. Roger Williams being the top student for Cape. And Mr. President, I know that Roger has worked along with you, and you have played a big part in a lot of what he has done. So I want to think that you will take some commendation too. And the mover of the bill also mentioned Thalia Doe of the Gingerland Secondary School for being the top CSEC student here on the island of Nevis. And I'm proud to say that both students are cousins of mine. That makes me feel really good. But while those students came out tops in Cape and CSEC, respectively, there were many other excellent performances from our students at the CSS, at the GSS, at the private high school, the NISS, and at the sixth form level. So I want to take the opportunity to congratulate all of our students. I want to congratulate the principals. I want to congratulate all of the staff of the schools. I think that you continue to do exemplary work, and I look forward to what is to come in the future. Our primary schools too, Mr. President, they have been performing really well. You know something, Mr. President, I enjoy going to the primary schools more than anything else. I think the children in the primary school, I think they love me, you know. When I get to the primary schools, sometimes I can hardly walk. The children, they flock me, they come and they hug me and so on, and you can't pay for that type of experience. That is something. And I love being around the children. It's something kind of new for me, but I really, really appreciate it. And I want to say to the various principals of the primary schools and the staff of all the schools, I want to take some time out to publicly commend them and congratulate them for the hard work that they have done throughout the past school year. And I want to give them my support for the work that they continue to do and for the work that they will be doing into the future. Mr. President, as good as we are in education, there is room still for improvement, because the world it's a dynamic world. It changes every single day, and with the proliferation of modern technology, it is changing at such a rapid pace that we too have to change if we are to remain relevant and if the next generation is to keep up with the rest of the world. So, as good as our education system is, we have to change to ensure that we are up to the times. Mr. President, the ministry is Education, Library Services, and Information Technology. I want to speak a bit about our library services. Just about 2 weeks ago, Mr. President, myself along with the permanent secretary, he's in the gallery, and the principal education officer was with us. We took a visit to the public library here in Charlestown, and the visit was at the request of the librarian and the staff. They wanted to meet with me as the minister with responsibility for the library to express some difficulty that they had been having, to share with us some of the challenges that they had been facing. So we went there and we had a very good and candid discussion with them. They raised some issues that had been raised with us already throughout the year, and we were already looking at them. But there's nothing quite like going there and being there and seeing it for yourself. And subsequent, or after this meeting, Mr. President, I sought the counsel of the Premier and the Cabinet, and the government has consented to have the Charlestown Public Library temporarily relocated. At this time, the ministry is actively pursuing a temporary home for the public library while we determine the best course of action for permanent accommodations for the library. You see, the working conditions, we all know the building is a is an old building. It's a very historical building. But the working conditions there were not the best. And we felt that it was in the best interest of the staff and in the best interest of the persons who would use the facility to have it temporarily relocated. Earlier in this year, Mr. President, we took a similar decision to temporarily close the public library in Gingerland. Of course, like the decision for Charlestown, it was not a decision that was taken lightly. In that case, we did not relocate the library, but we relocated the staff to some of our school libraries and to the library here in town. But, Mr. President, I'm hopeful that in the first quarter of 2019, that we can start some work on the renovation and restoration and upgrade of the Gingerland Public Library. We've engaged a local architect already to work on some restoration plans. Those plans are completed, and we will have them vetted, and hopefully early in the new year we can see some construction start. Despite these challenges, Mr. President, the library has had some successes throughout the year. If you would allow me, I would highlight a few. In February, the library had its Black History Month exhibition featuring Arthur Anslin. In March, there was the World Poetry Day exhibition featuring Derek Walcott. In April, World Book and Copyright Day exhibition featuring the works of Sir Probin Innes. Regular storytime sessions had been happening throughout 2018 at the various preschools throughout the island. In the summer, the library had the annual Summer Environmental Awareness Program from July 16th to July 27th, and the theme was Protecting an Endangered Culture, Securing Our Future. They had over 80 children who participated, and that is one of the long-standing activities of the library, and it was very successful this year. The library has also been active with some of the other government offices, such as the Tourism Authority, in educating persons about tourism on the island of Nevis. In September, there was International Literacy Day, and various staff from the libraries went around to some of the primary schools on the island to give talks. In September, we had the Independence Exhibition, which looked at past Governor Generals and Deputy Governor Generals from 1983 to the present. Of course, the library is also heavily involved with the preparations for SAT exams for our young persons who are looking to go to university in the United States of America. They normally have SAT classes running, and that is another one of the accomplishments of the library throughout the year. So, President, as I said a bit earlier, with all these advancement in technology and so on, some people tend not to see the need to go to the library. But the ministry believes that the library should remain one of the core parts of our society. And so we will endeavor to continue to work with the staff of the library to keep the library relevant and to have the library go on for many, many years to come. Because as I said earlier, in the years to come when we are all gone, that's where people are going to go to get the information that will tell them how we lived in 2018 and so on. So, President, to talk a little bit about information technology and information technology, of course, it's the here and now, it's the now thing, it's the hip thing, we can't leave home without our cell phone, Mr. President. Even the watches that we wear now are smart. So it's all about technology in today's world. The information technology, Mr. President, is the circulatory system now of any modern society. And the NIA has been very, very smart over the years. Not just today, but going back through successive governments, the NIA has been very smart because they recognize the importance of information technology at a very early time and have put the necessary things in place for us to build out our IT infrastructure so that the government can operate as a modern government. And again, the Speaker, in putting forward the bill yesterday, in section 4.2 on page 19 of the presentation, would have stated, we continue to dedicate substantial resources to develop our information technology capabilities. Our long-term goal is to computerize all government operations. So again, I think the mover has gotten it correct, Mr. President. I think the budget, insofar as information technology goes, is right on point. I think it recognizes where we are, and it has put the necessary funding has been placed in the budget to ensure that we can continue to grow and we can continue to meet our goals as far as developing our information technology capabilities goes. Mr. President, IT department is very, very active. They are involved in everything. I think I can say that without fear of condemnation. Yeah, I think I can say that because they're involved in the roads too. That's the only thing I was going to say that IT might not be involved in. But I think they are, because sometimes you have to move the poles. IT have their cables and the poles, so they have to be involved. So IT is involved in everything that government does. To highlight a few things that they would have been involved in throughout the year, we had ICT Week in 2018. That was at the end of April. And I think it was the second annual ICT Week. And the theme was ICT, supporting the thrust towards the 21st century economy. And during that week, we had talks in the high schools. There was a primary school quiz. We had the very significant launch of the newly revamped Nevis Island Administration web portal. And that was something that was very significant. Not just a website, Mr. President, but a web portal that you can go to and you can find links to everything about the Nevis Island Administration. You can find all of, well, not all, but most of the laws and so on. And it does have an element of e-government involved in it. But I will speak a little bit about that in a little bit. As part of the ICT Week, we had speeches from the likes of Mr. Jeremy Stevens. He's an expert on blockchain technology. I think the mover of the bill yesterday spoke a bit about blockchain and about cryptocurrency, and that it seems to be one of the new things in today's world, that we are moving to not having the physical money, but that money being held in cyberspace. And blockchain technology is one of the technologies that's enabling the proliferation of these internet-based monies. I think we would have all heard about Bitcoin. I think most of us would have heard of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is one such cryptocurrency. They also had presentations from CaribPay. CaribPay is an online currency that we have here in the Federation, a sort of digital wallet solution. We had presentations from JAD on the same digital wallet solutions, from the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank about the regulation of blockchain technology. We had presentations from Dell. We would have all heard of Dell. Dell is a large international corporation. And from Amazon Web Services about their cloud technologies. Amazon is one of the largest providers of cloud technology. We all know nowadays when you get your phone, one of the first things they want you to set up is a cloud account. You store all of your pictures and everything in the cloud. So nowadays, the physical hard drive is something that is already going out of date, and everybody is holding everything in the cloud now. So we had Amazon Web Services talking about their cloud technology. And of course, Cable and Wireless, who's the parent company of Flow, and they were speaking about the 21st century infrastructure in terms of IT infrastructure. So that was the ICT week. One of the other successes of the IT department has been the electronic funds transfer. And the electronic funds transfer project is an initiative that was launched by the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. And what they did now is that they implemented a check imaging process where now funds can be transferred. The government can transfer funds directly into the accounts of the government workers. So it's no longer the case that the government has to send the funds to the bank via check, and then the checks have to go into the clearing house and so on. The funds are now sent directly from the government into the accounts of the account holders. So no more going to the bank, no more the bank having to go to the clearing house and so on. And this cuts down on the costs to the government. Government don't have to print checks and all of those type of things. And it makes for a much smoother process. So that's one of the things that the IT department would have assisted with throughout the year. Of course, there was the upgrade of the Austerity platform, and that is the platform that they use to do all the budgeting and so on for the government. So IT is a big part of the budgeting, and we are here for the budget all this week. So that Austerity platform, that's what they use to put all of the numbers and get all of the graphs and so on, so that we could know where the government is in terms of its financing and so on. There's an EMIS platform that has been deployed at the Gingerland Secondary School. It was done by one of the gentlemen in the IT department in collaboration with someone who teaches at the GSS. I don't think they would want me to mention their names, but what they have been doing with it over the year is they use it to do scheduling and mark sheets and transcripts and so on. And it is something that the ministry has been looking at to see if it is something that we can build on and spread out to the other schools. They also worked on an application for work permit, so that work permit can now be done online or via computer. And one of the things that I feel really good about was the direct score application. You know, we always, in Culturama, after the show, Queen show, Calypso show, whatever the case is, after the show is done, we have to sit there for another hour and a half, 2 hours maybe, for the schools to come back. The IT department created a platform that the scores can be done electronically. So as soon as the show is over, the tabulation is done in a matter of a few minutes, and they can come back out on stage and say who the winners are and the first runner-up and so on. So that was done by the IT department. And of course, the IT is also the department that deals with the NIA fiber infrastructure. Almost all of the NIA is now connected by fiber. They continue to deploy voice over IP telephony. In the past, when you wanted to communicate in a sort of closed telephone system where you use line 1, line 2, and so on, for those who know about that, you had to get what you call a physical PBX, and that would be provided by the service provider. Now the PBX is virtual, so it's a software PBX and no longer a hard wire, hard physical PBX. And the IT department, they are the ones who are spearheading this. I think in 2018 they would have deployed over 50 voice over IP phones. And so what this does, Mr. President, it brings down the cost. The cost of the NIA communicating from one office to the next, it drops the cost significantly, because you don't need to have the service provider come in now to provide all of the different phones. You get a main distribution from them, and then you do all the rest by virtual PBX. They have been involved in all of the major civil works projects being done. We have the Treasury building, the new CCTV control center, the cultural complex, Hamilton House, right here, the Nevis Athletic Stadium, the vet office, the abattoir. So pretty much the new police station in Newcastle, the hospital. So pretty much all of the government's infrastructural projects, they are a part of it. Okay. So for 2019, Mr. President, what can we expect from IT? One of the big things that we want to do in IT is to roll out e-government services. I think e-government is something that we have all heard about. And what e-government does, it allows the interaction of citizens with the NIA via an electronic platform. Some of the critical components of it is multi-channel delivery, which means that these services will be provided. You could get them by your computer, on a website. You could get them by your cell phone via a mobile application, and you can also get them via a kiosk. That is, if you go into the regular government office, they will have a kiosk there that allow you to access the e-government service. These things will make it easier for the general public to interact with the government in terms of bill payment and so on. We also want to bring some of the government services online. The processing of birth and death certificates, payment of water bills, business license applications. These are things that we want to bring online and make easier. So, President, we also have the Cotton Ground Fiber Project, which will expand the government's wide area network all the way over to the Cotton Ground and Cades Bay area. That is to be done in 2019. And one of the things that will do, and one of the reasons why it is so important, is that when we roll out the CCTV project in Nevis, Mr. Premier, it's coming in 2019, right? When we roll out the CCTV project in Nevis in 2019, we will be able to have CCTV coverage all the way over into where the extent of the fiber cable is. So, Mr. President, right now what you have conventional cabling, the copper cabling and so on, but the bandwidth that you can get from copper is far less than what you would get from the fiber. So we are going to be carrying fiber all the way over into Cotton Ground and the Cades Bay area. So project, Mr. President, I think I spoke a bit about the Austerity enhancement project, and I said that Austerity is what they use to do the financial management, what they use to do the budget and so on. So this application will be further enhanced in 2019. We expect that it would be able to do payroll, accounts payable, accounts receivable, electronic funds transfer, and procurement. One of the other things that we want to do in 2019 is we will help to facilitate the digitization of the records at the Registrar General. We know that when you have to go to get your birth certificate and your death certificates and so on, that it's all paper. But we want to bring these into the digital realm come next year. And we all know what the advantages of having files digital. We'll be able to have digital signatures and so on with these files. So not only is it going to be something that's on the computer, but it's going to be something that you can go and continuously have access to the original. So that's another thing that's going to be happening in terms of IT in 2019. So all told, Mr. President, there's a lot to look forward for in the way of IT. There are a couple other things that IT is involved in when it comes to education and so on, but I wanted to talk about them under education, because much of what we want to do in education involves technology. So to talk a bit about education, Mr. President, and how am I doing on time? Okay. I don't want to be too long, you know. the other day.
You have 40 minutes.
40 minutes, yeah. I don't want to be too long. People tend to get antsy when you speak for a very long time. So President, St. Kitts and Nevis, and more specifically here on Nevis, we wouldn't consider ourselves to be a wealthy nation, even though I think we have been put in the category of middle income country. We're not a wealthy country. People on Nevis are not generally rich people. The average person on Nevis is somebody who is working really hard to make ends meet, working really hard to look after his or her family. And education has always been that great equalizer. Because if you can get access to good education and you can be educated then you can probably go anywhere the world over, and you can be productive, and indeed you can be a big part of that society. And so we have always put a high, what's the word that I'm looking for? We have always put great emphasis on education here on Nevis, because we believe that through education we can rise above many of the challenges that we have. So, President, again, I want to reference the mover of the bill and reference the bill, because this of course is the budget, and I'm here to support the budget. So the mover of the bill said yesterday that education is indeed the fundamental building block on which the advancement of any society is built. And I think the mover got it 100% correct, Mr. President. Mr. President, I want to tell you something, and I think it's important that something like this is said. You see all that we are doing as a government, all the fiscal prudence, all the infrastructural development, all the housing, all the proper health care, all the social services, the sports, the agriculture, the tourism. I think I got everything, right? That's everything that we do. Close to it. All that we are doing would be for naught if we don't educate our children properly. Understand, Mr. President?
Yes.
I think every single thing that we do as a government, we have to ground it back to education. Because if we don't educate our children properly so that they could come up to be better than we are, and they could continue to build and grow the society, then it will all be for naught. Because if you don't have an educated population, what will happen to all of the gains that you make today? So I think the mover of the bill got it 100% correct, and I will quote him again. Education is the fundamental building block on which the advancement of any society is built. And I saw the former member for town earlier this morning in the house, and Nevis one, farmer. And I've been in the house once or twice when he has been here, and he likes to say, he's a smart guy. And I believe that that's a fitting statement for now, when the mover said that the fundamental building block for the advancement of the society is education. That's a very smart statement. And it shows you the type of government that we have, that we recognize this, that all that we do would be for naught if we don't have the type of education system that prepares our children to meet the challenges of the future. So, President, the mover made mention of the 2017 to 2021 education sector plan. And the education sector plan, the goal of the plan, the stated goal of the plan is embracing change and securing the future. And this is a plan that continues to be our overall blueprint in education. It will take us down to 2021. And it speaks of education as being inclusive. It speaks of education as not leaving anybody behind. The plan speaks of education as starting from the babies all the way up to adulthood. And it tries to ensure that we are catching persons from all walks of life in society. I think it's a very comprehensive plan, and I'm happy to be working within the scope of the plan, and I will endeavor to work with the good folks in the Ministry of Education and in the Department of Education to ensure that when 2021 comes around, that our education system here in Nevis would have met most, if not all, of the goals of the sector plan. Mr. President, we have initiatives in education such as the Child-Friendly School Initiative, and that initiative, I think these things are self-explanatory. Child-Friendly School Initiatives. It means that our schools must be conducive to learning for our children. That's one of the initiatives that we have, that we are working under. We have the Early Learners Project, which the mover of the bill mentioned yesterday. And this is a project that is being done in conjunction with the OECS and with financial assistance from USAID. And basically what this Early Learners Project does is it's seeking to give our young ones a jump start on reading. Reading is fundamental. If you're able to read, then you're able to comprehend and understand. And I think that is fundamental to any education system. So those are a few of the projects that we have under education. I want to speak about another project that we have that has been ongoing for some time now, and we are about to start seeing some real physical work on the ground, and that's the TVET project, Mr. President. And when the member opposite spoke this morning, he spoke about the education system as being rather one-dimensional, and that we are producing a lot of bright students with a lot of subjects, but they are not prepared for the workplace. Mr. President, I probably would not put it over in quite the same way that the member opposite did, but there are some things in our education. There's some room for change. There's some flexibility for change. And this TVET project that we are about to ramp up will bring some real change to the education system here on Nevis, when students get to high school especially. And what TVET is basically technical, vocational education and training. And we are going to be providing education and training that is geared towards preparing students for the workplace. So that's the whole emphasis of TVET. We're going to be preparing our students so when they are finished with school, when they are done with high school, they could step out into the world of work. They could go out and be a skilled tradesman. They could go out and be a skilled chef, skilled hairstylist or beautician. They could go out and be a good seamstress, a good plumber, a good electrician, straight out of school. There wouldn't be that need for that 5 to 10 years to learn the craft. We are going to be teaching them the skills in school. You know, we have some students who are, for whatever reason, not as academically inclined as others. And so TVET will provide an avenue for them to learn more practical things. But, Mr. President, don't get the impression that TVET is just practical, because there will be different levels of qualification that you can achieve. Because we have some persons who are very academic, who also want to be practical, and there will also be opportunities for them in TVET that they could follow that technical path and get high-level certification. So when they're finished with high school, if they want to go on to tertiary institutions and pursue careers that are technically inclined, that they will have the necessary background and the necessary qualifications to get them into those areas. Mr. President, also under this TVET project, this year, the Ministry of Education received 190 desktop computers, 50 laptop computers, and 6 projectors. These are to be distributed between the 2 government high schools and Nevis. As a matter of fact, Mr. President, we are supposed to be refurbishing the main computer lab at the Gingerland Secondary School, and we are supposed to be outfitting a new room as a computer lab at the Gingerland Secondary School to accommodate some of these 190 desktops. And this work is to be done over the Christmas, so that come January when school opens, these labs are going to be available, and these computers are going to be available for use by our students. You might wonder, Mr. President, why I did not say CSS also, but the TVET project calls for some major renovation work to be done on the technical wing of the Charleston Secondary School, and that wing is the area that houses the main computer labs at Charleston Secondary School. So we would need to get that renovation work done first before we get those computers in there. Nonetheless, there are other labs at Charleston Secondary School that will receive upgraded computers shortly. So that's a little bit about TVET, Mr. President, and I hope the member opposite, that wherever he is, he has tuned in to the House, and I think he would be happy to hear that we are moving in the direction where we are bringing a technical side to the education system, and we are hoping that we will be able to produce students that are ready for the workplace, technically competent, they have the knowledge to do the work in their minds, and they also have the physical competence to do the work. I didn't want to talk too long, you know. A little bit about physical education, Mr. President, because physical education is a big part of our education curriculum. And what we want to do, Mr. President, is to give our students every opportunity to benefit from sports. Sports is a big thing. We've produced West Indies cricketers in Nevis. We've produced Olympians and so on. And through the education system, we want to give the students that push forward. We've all seen the inter-primary school sports here in Nevis. It's probably the biggest thing between that and the parade of troops. Those have to be the 2 biggest events on Nevis, the mini Olympics. This year, we had the mini Olympics being held at the new facility, the Mondo Track facility, and the Charlestown Primary, they would have come out the winner. I want to say congratulations to them. And also on sports in school, we have the finals of the primary school football tournament that has been going on. That's going to be tomorrow at the E.T. Willett Park at 2:30. And the finals is going to be between the St. Thomas's Primary and the Elizabeth Pemberton Primary. That's at 2:30. And I want to encourage everybody who can to go out to the park tomorrow and see our youngsters play some football. Who knows, there might be an international football star in the making right there. And we in the Ministry of Education, Mr. President, we want to assist our students in any way possible. We are going to be actively pursuing relationships with tertiary institutions to see if we can get some of our better athletes into tertiary institutions on scholarships. I think that will provide incentive to some of our students. Because what we have seen is that at the primary level, we have a whole lot of athletes. But when you get to the high school level, some of them seem to drop off and they're no longer interested in sports. Sports is a big thing. Sports can take you around the world. Sports can make you great. Look at the island of Jamaica that is not too far from us. Look at people like Usain Bolt. And you don't even have to look so far. Look at Kim Collins, who is from right here in St. Kitts. Kim Collins is an international star who is known all over the world. So we want our students to see sports as a viable avenue for them. Mr. President, with any institution, the system is only as good as the people working in it. The education system is no different. I want the persons working in education to understand that the government is fully committed to education. The government is fully committed to the people working in education. I remember earlier this year, myself and the permanent secretary, we would have visited all of the schools on island, and we would have listened to the various issues that our teachers and the other members of staff had. And one of the issues that the good folks at the high school had was that some of the teachers who were considered to be yearheads, meaning, you know, you have first farm, second farm, third farm. The yearhead is the person who's in charge of the farm. And some of the persons who are department heads, you know, we have chemistry or science department, we have math department, foreign languages department, and they have a teacher that's designated as the teacher in charge of the department. Those teachers said that they have been working for years and it's a lot of extra work for them, and that a stipend would have been in order. And when we got to the meeting, that's one of the things that they were very forceful about. And I'm happy to say that the government has consented, and that come next month, the year heads and the department heads should start getting their stipend. So I'm very happy. I'm very happy that we have been able to deliver that. We also, I just came off of sports. We also had a little issue with some of our sports officers in education, where they were having some issues with their appointment. I am happy also to announce that the Ministry of Education, working along with the HR ministry, that we have come up with a framework to get those appointments done. So throughout the year, when the proper time comes for the appointment, these appointments will be done. And Mr. President, I want to say a big thank you to the Honorable Premier. I think he was very understanding when we brought these issues, and he has been very, very accommodating. I also want to commend the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Education. He worked tirelessly to bring these two issues forward and to ensure that we had a satisfactory solution at the end of all of the discussions. Mr. President, in education, over the past year, we've had some work done. I know that when the Minister with responsibility for works comes to speak, that he will, you know, talk about some of the work that has been done, but it's worth mentioning from an education standpoint that we've had quite a bit of work done. We've had some major works done. We had the completion of the main office at the Gingerland Secondary School. There's a brand new office there. I remember, Mr. President, when I think it was last year, when we broke down the office that had been there for some time. The office had been functionally obsolete and also structurally obsolete. I remember when we broke it down that there was a lot of talk about it. People met me and they cussed me in the street. And now I don't think anybody is cursing because they have seen what is there. The principal is happy. All of the staff, they're happy. And everybody who has met me since that, some of the same persons who were the ones cussing and saying, oh, I should not do that, I think they feel very good about it. So that is a feel-good story. We also had the construction of new bathrooms at the Gingerland Secondary School. And we've had the completion of expanded classrooms at the Ivor Walters Primary School, and I think that was something that we really, really needed, Mr. President, because since we had the development of the Cherry Gardens development, it has brought a lot of persons into that Prospect Brown Hill area, and the school was really overloaded. So we needed those additional classrooms. Of course, we had a lot of other minor works done throughout the year, and I want to express my thanks to the Ministry of Works, to the Minister of Works, to the Public Works Department for their continued assistance throughout the year with all of the infrastructural needs of the school. Mr. President, you see, I think that this is a really good budget. Yesterday, when the mover spoke, all the way in the back of the presentation at section 196, when the mover spoke about major allocations, he stated that some funds allocated under education are to be used for the acquisition of lands, for the construction of a tertiary education facility. I believe that the member opposite missed that. You see, what I've learned from the mover of the bill is that we want to under-promise and over-deliver. Got it right? So tucked in the back of the presentation is that we have placed some monies in the budget to see about the acquisition of lands for the construction of a tertiary education facility here on the island of Nevis. I think right now the major tertiary education facility on Nevis is the Charlestown Sixth Form, the Nevis Sixth Form College, which is up at the physical site located at the Charlestown Secondary School. And it has been there since 1980. And we must say kudos to those who came before us who had the foresight to bring sixth form education to Nevis. I think it has been beneficial to many of us here on the island of Nevis. I would have gone to sixth form, I would have benefited greatly. And I know many other persons would have done the same. But the time has come, as with everything, you know, the time has come for change. The world is changing and we must change also. So in the not too distant future, Mr. President, we are going to see a change in a big way when it comes to the sixth form and when it comes to tertiary education as a whole here on the island of Nevis. And in 2019, we are going to put most of the things together that we need, because a lot of things need to happen for this move to happen. The member opposite is easy to talk, you know, hindsight is 20/20, and the member opposite is speaking from a lot of hindsight. I believe at one time He was Premier and he was Minister of Education. So he knows that it's not an easy thing. Anybody can say, get up and do. But to actually do it is a different thing. I mean, he would have been around government since 1987. Since 1987, and would have served in the capacity as Minister of Education. And under his watch, it was not done. Suffice it to say, Mr. President, we are going to have it done in the not too distant future. I don't want to come here and tell you that it's going to happen next year, or it's going to happen the year after, or the year after that. What I prefer is that we see it happening, and when it's happening, we talk about it. I want to err on the side of caution, talk less, and do more. Mr. President, education is also very important insofar as crime is concerned. A lot of the crime, sadly, Mr. President, a lot of the crime, young people. And here on Nevis, every young person has to go to school. So they come up through the education system. And crime is not an easy thing that any one person has the answer to. But most certainly, Mr. President, we in education have a role to play. We have to ensure that we raise up and we nurture the young ones in such a way that there is no need for them to move towards crime and criminality and criminal activities. And I spoke earlier about the TVET project, and this is one of the things that we think will be a big help, because some of the students, a lot of the persons, a lot of the individuals who tend to get themselves mixed up in criminal activities are persons who tend to feel lost in society, who feel as though there's no place for them in society. Maybe they can't get a job or, you know, that type of thing. I'll tell you about something that happened to me a couple of weeks ago. I happened to be going by a bank in Nevis to go by the ATM to get a couple dollars, and I was met as I came out of the ATM. You know, I was getting some money to pay some bills. And the gentleman said to me that, give me something now. It's somebody who I know. And I told him, you know, this is to pay some bills, so I'm really not in a position to give you from this. I've given to him before, so it's not like I don't give. I have. But that specific time, I was paying some bills. So then he turned to me and he said, you know, the government need to carry up the PEP, you know. I said, what do you mean carry up the PEP? He said, we need to carry up the PEP, man. The $300 and something there is too low. So I said, what you mean by that? He said, the PEP need to go up to about $800 and something. So I said, well, if you get in the PEP and you're doing a little thing, why you can't find something else to do? And he said to me that, well, the only other thing we could do is to go and rob people. When I carry up the PEP, then we're going to go and rob people. And I was astonished. And I turned to the gentleman and I said, well, you know, if your choice is to go and rob people, I think that would be a bad choice. That is a choice that, you know, it can land you anywhere good. And why would you want to go and harm other persons who have made the decision to go out and work hard when your decision is to sit around and not do anything? Mr. President, that is just an example of some of what we have going on. So in education, what we have to do is to ensure that the younger ones, that we raise them up in such a way that they understand the value of hard work, that they understand that it's not right to go out and take what somebody else have. and that we equip them, Mr. President, with the necessary skills. It's not something that's going to happen overnight, but I am confident that we are taking the steps in the correct direction. In the meantime, however, Mr. President, while we take the steps to change the hearts and minds of the young, we will ensure to beef up the security, because there will be those who are bent on activities that are, not good and unbecoming. And we do not want to have them around to influence the other students who are looking to go on the right path. So we will be looking into beefing up the securities in our schools. Over the past year, we would have deployed CCTV cameras at the Charlestown Secondary School. In 2019, we are supposed to be deploying CCTV cameras at the Gingerland Secondary School, and we will be exploring implementing CCTV cameras at our primary schools. We are also going to be looking into beefing up the human security and providing training for the officers who provide security. So, Mr. President, I think a few houses ago, I came here and I said, when I spoke to young people about crime, and you asked them about crime, everybody said, no, not me, and so on. And it was taken and made into a jingle and into a thing. Everybody sends it to me on WhatsApp of me saying, no, not me. It was not me, it was somebody else. And that's what we have happening. And I think, Mr. President, that through education and going forward, we will see some reduction in crime because of the various projects and plans that we have. I think I'm going to end, Mr. President, and I want to end by I think I'm going to end here, Mr. President. This is one of my shorter presentations. I want to take the opportunity to say thank you to the good folks in the Ministry of Education, Library Services, and Information Technology. In this year, we had the departure of Mr. Quincy Prentice, who was the director of the Information Technology Department, and I think that Quincy did a remarkable job to move IT forward in terms of the Nevis Island administration and in the island of Nevis as a whole. I want to wish him all the best on his endeavors. Mr. Craig David has now taken up the mantle as the IT director, and he has my full support. A brilliant young man. We would have gone to school around the same time, and I think that under his supervision that we will continue to place ourselves in Nevis at the forefront of technology. I also want to say a big thank you to the immediate past Principal Education Officer, Mrs. Palsy Wilkin, who has gone into retirement. Mrs. Wilkin, she has worked tirelessly in education. She had a very long and distinguished career in education, and she has left the Department of Education in a very strong position. So I want to wish her all the best in all of her endeavors going forward. Ms. Zanella Claxton has now taken up the mantle of the Principal Education Officer. She, of course, has the full support of the ministry and of the government. A young person, the government, of course, is giving opportunities to young people, and Zanella is a young, brilliant person who has proven that she has the ability to lead, and I know under her, I have every confidence that under her leadership, the Department of Education will continue to grow. Of course, I want to thank the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Education, Mr. Kevin Barrett. I wouldn't be able to get anything done without Mr. Barrett. He has been excellent throughout the year. He has been relentless in pushing the cause of education, in pushing for our schools and in advocating for our teachers, and I want to thank him for all of his hard work. He is here in the gallery, and if the cameraman could focus the camera on him so that everybody can see who he is, I would appreciate that, and I want to say thank you to him. I also want to say a thanks to my personal assistant, Mrs. Julie Smitten. Life has been a lot easier since she has come. So, and Julie keeps telling me that people tend to forget the administrative staff. So I didn't want to be negligent in forgetting my own administrative staff. I want to say thanks to all of the administrative staff, as a matter of fact, in the Ministry of Education, the Department of Education, and in all of our schools. I want you all to feel appreciated. The work of the school don't get done without the administrative staff. Of course, thanks to all of the principals and all of the teachers. I want to, Mr. President, wish you a Merry Christmas. I want to wish all of my colleague members in the government a Merry Christmas, the clerk, the sergeant at arms, everybody who's here in the house and everybody who is listening or watching. I want you all to enjoy the Christmas season and to have a bright and prosperous 2019 when it rolls around. With that said, Mr. President, I want to wish the bill safe passage through this honorable house. May it please you.
Three.
Mr. President, I rise and seek your leave to have this honorable house adjourn until 3 p.m. this afternoon. We will continue the debate.
Mr. President, I rise to second the motion.
The question is that the question is that this house be adjourned until 3 p.m. this afternoon. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? Ayes have it. House adjourned.